Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if neglected Naruto joins IWA. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. It was done, the Kyuubi was sealed into a newborn child. But not just any child. The Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato, had sealed the greatest of the Biju into his own son. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, had retaken office instantly to make sure Konoha stayed strong and united. The problem is that they were united, just for the wrong reason. The newborn child was named Naruto, as agreed by his parents. However, to try and hide him from his father's enemies, he was given his mother's surname, Uzumaki. The problem was this also hid it from the village, and if they knew, then perhaps they would be united for a different cause. Hiruzen wasn't sure how, but word had spread almost instantly that the Yondaime didn't kill the demon but rather sealed it into a newborn child. He suspected Danzo in some ploy to gain Naruto for himself to be a weapon, but that would not happen. He promised Minato in his final moments he would protect his child. But that meant keeping Naruto in the village as an orphan or giving into what the village was united for, kill the child. Killing him was out of the question. That wouldn't be protecting anybody, but rather it would release the demon back into the world. He could try explaining that, but save for a select few, the village was ignorant in the ways of Fuinjutsu, so they would think he was simply making up an excuse to save the boy. And even if they didn't kill him, Naruto would be forced to live a life of hatred and pain. The elder man couldn't force that onto him. Hell, he wouldn't force that onto the most evil man in the world unless he had to. He was far too kind like that. So what did that leave for the boy? He could adopt him into his family, or maybe another shinobi family that understood that the boy was not the fox could. But that would draw the hatred of the people to whoever was keeping him. As Hokage, he needed the people to obey him, so it wouldn't do to have them hate him. And the clans needed to stay loyal to the village, which would be extremely hard if they were hated for trying to raise a young boy. He could give him to Danzo to be trained as a weapon. But that would never happen. He knew Danzo's training and refused to make the boy an emotionless tool. Especially one that would be loyal to the old Warhawk and not to Konoha itself. So that was out of the question. Killing him would release the Kyuubi and start the destruction and death all over again, rendering Minato's final sacrifice null and void. So no killing a baby tonight, despite the cries for his blood. As Sarutobi, though, only one option seemed to work. He would have to send the boy away until he deemed him ready for the responsibility placed on him. Or until the villagers stopped hating him, and that was likely never going to happen. Sarutobi knew of a family that owed him a favor and was thinking of adopting a child on a village near Hai no Kuni's border, so he figured sending Naruto there would be the best option. Hiruzen sighed as he got out a blank scroll and began writing out the message to explain the boy's plight. He only hoped they wouldn't be as ignorant as the villagers being kept alive simply because the boy they wanted dead was alive and sleeping peacefully. Rin, Sarutobi called as he finished the note. Soon enough a Jonin entered his office from waiting just outside as he had asked. She bowed as he sealed up the scroll and handed it to her. This is an S-ranked mission for you of the utmost importance. Her eyes widened as she was not expecting such a dangerous mission immediately after the attack. I need you to take this to a family by the name of Ichika in the village of Torisei on the border of Hai no Kuni. Not only are you taking this scroll, you will be taking baby Naruto to them as well. He said as he handed her the scroll and motioned to the sleeping child in the crib by the desk. Rin knew full well who he was. Her sensei had been overjoyed that he was going to be a father and had shared it with a select few, his old team being part of that small group. She also understood that Naruto was Naruto, not Kyuubi. Protect him with your life, and if you wish you may stay with the family for a few days after delivering Naruto to them. I also need to let you know, you must sneak out of the village. Some will want to kill the child and will likely be waiting to see if I send him away, and will likely try to kill him as soon as they see him. Not to worry, Hokage-sama. I won't let a single hair on his head be harmed. Rin responded right away as she pocketed the scroll. She then walked over and after admiring the sleeping child for a moment she picked him up and wrapped him in some blankets to keep him warm before turning to the Hokage. Is there anything else I should know? You must not tell a soul what is going on. Not even Kakashi. Rin winced slightly. Kakashi was her boyfriend and they were getting somewhat serious. She honestly expected him to propose soon. But that would have to wait. She was going to protect her sensei's son and make sure he wasn't harmed. Now go, I can cover for your absence for a short while, but then they will ask questions and I will have to say that I sent Naruto away. I will never say where, and when you return I'll be forced to have a Yamanaka wipe the memory of the mission from your mind. I'm sorry, Rin. She looked down sadly before steeling her features and nodding. With one last look at the child in her arms, she then left via a shunshin and headed off to do her mission. Her breath was ragged and she had blood running down her face. This was both expected and completely surprising. Not even 10 minutes after leaving, Rin was being chased. By Anbu no less. However, they all wore black and had blank masks, meaning they weren't regular Anbu but Root, Gonzo's personal force. They were chasing her to get Naruto, not to kill him but to deliver him to their master. But Rin would have none of that. She had already killed one. 3 were left, but they weren't making it easy for her. Jonin she was, but she had the skill of an Anbu. She was just hoping to one day be a Jonin sensei, so she never bothered trying to join their ranks. A Root ninja dropped down in front of her and tried to stab her with his tanto, but she ducked under the attack and struck him in the chest with a glowing right hand. Chakra scalpels, a medic ninja's best combat jutsu. The result was instant. The arteries around his heart were severed and he dropped to the ground dead. 2 down, 2 to go. Rin wouldn't let anything harm Naruto, this she swore. Man, this mission was so boring. Deidara did everything. A man said. He had on a simple Iwa Jonin uniform and gray hair that laid messily upon his head. Behind him were 2 others wearing the same uniform, one with spiked green hair and the other being bald. Oh, shut up, The explosion was such an expression of my art. You should be proud to have seen it without being the target, A man wearing the same uniform said. He had gray eyes and long blonde hair done up in a ponytail, save for a large bang that covered one side of his face. Both of you quiet. The green-haired one spoke quickly. He looked around as they all came to a stop. I smell blood. Let's check it out, he ordered as they all leapt towards the source he smelled. About 20 meters from where they were was the scene of quite a battle. There was scorch marks from Kaiden Jutsu, a few upturned slabs of the ground that were likely caused by a Doden Jutsu, and Shuriken and Kunai littered the area. But most surprised was the mark each body carried, the mark of the leaf. Konoha ninja. And apparently they were fighting each other to the death. The Iwa ninjas smirked seeing their greatest and most hated enemy dead from battling amongst themselves before they noticed something. 2 of the 3 bodies were wearing similar uniforms and the third was huddled next to something. While the bald man and gray-haired one began raiding the 2 others for their supplies and maybe something else of interest, Deidara and the squad leader went over to the woman to see what was up with her. What they found was shocking to say the least. She was curled around a small baby boy whose blankets were soaking up the blood coming from a large wound to her chest. Despite being soaked in blood, the baby was still sleeping peacefully, not a single scratch on him. Deidara moved the woman away from the kid as the other man picked up and examined the child. Deidara searched the woman for anything while the child seemed to wake up. And it did the first thing any baby does when woken from its nap, it started crying. Loudly. The 2 that searched the dead Root ninja started clutching their ears as they spun around to see the child their leader was holding. Will you shut that brat up? God, he could wake the fucking dead. And look at his eyes and that hair. He's probably related to the bastard Yondaime. I say we kill him and head home. The other shouted. Hold on, I think we should take him home with us, Deidara said as he read a scroll he found on the woman. The others looked at him in shock as he stood up and pocketed the parchment with a smirk. I have a feeling old Oanuki is gonna want to see this kid, he said as he looked at the child. And why's that? I'm starting to agree with them about taking the brat out, the leader said as he stared at the baby in his hands. If Tsuchikage-sama decides to kill the boy, then I'll give all 3 of you my mission payment for this mission and I won't turn anything into my art for a week, Deidara said as he took the child from their boss. The other 3 stared at him. The mission may have been easy, but it was a ranked, meaning that was a lot of money even after splitting it 3 ways. Plus Deidara always annoyed everyone back in Iwa by blowing up anything that annoyed him too much. If he was willing to risk so much over some brat that looked like he could be the Flash's kid, then they knew he was serious. Now let's get back to Iwa. The sooner Oanuki sees this kid the better. They all leapt away from the scene of the fight, intent on not only delivering their news of a mission completed but to see what was so important about the kid that Deidara was sticking up for him. Iwagakure, one of the 5 greats and the only one that could equal Konoha. Or at least they used to be able to. After the Third War, when Namikaze Minato almost single-handedly beat the shit out of them with his Hirishin no Jutsu, they could barely claim themselves a great village anymore. But they had been building their strength back up, and now they were just waiting for something to weaken Konoha so that they could take their vengeance and declare their superiority over the weak-hearted tree-huggers. The four, plus a small child, all let out a small sigh of happiness at being home again. They hurried to the Tsuchikage's office as fast as they could because they wanted to get paid. And the brat had been screaming on and off for the past day. They weren't sure if their ears could take much more. Perhaps that could be a new torture for the interrogation department? Being forced to listen to crying babies without being able to do anything to shut them up or claw your own ears off. Even though it was unintentional, the four were getting close to killing themselves since Deidara refused to let the boy get killed. Despite wanting to stuff clay down his throat and blowing up the brat himself towards the end of the trip. The four were led into the Tsuchikage's office to give their report instantly, seeing as it was a mission the old Kage wanted done right away. As they entered, they noticed the old Kage was flanked by his two favorite jonin, Kuritsuchi and Akatsuchi. Kuritsuchi was a young woman with black hair and violet pupil-less eyes whose beauty had captured the hearts of many in Iwa. Akatsuchi, on the other hand, was a tall, broad giant of a man that kept his hair under his bandana and was easily noticeable due to his large figure. However, sitting in the chair between them was a surprisingly short figure even compared to a normal person. He was the Sandame Tsuchikage, Ryotenben no Owanuki. "Ah, how was your mission? I trust it was a success? Fireworks sure make for some good art." Deidara replied with a smirk before the squad leader went over the details of the mission in greater detail. They found their target and then led him off during the festival so that Deidara could launch him into the air and blow him up with the regular fireworks. Nobody even noticed that one particular explosion was red from blood and not the fireworks. Owanuki smiled as the mission was a success. Now the company would be weaker and they wouldn't be able to get more guards, so that would make their eventual destruction all the easier. "Good, now is there anything else?" he said, wondering why Deidara was towards the back of the group and seemingly carrying something. The squad leader explained that on the way back they found a scene of battle where apparently 3 Konoha ninja had killed each other. However, it was why they seemed to be killing each other that caused Deidara to be acting like he was. "Deidara, what's in your arms and why shouldn't I just kill you or it now?" Deidara then walked up and placed the child on the desk in front of the Tsuchikage. "This kid is what they seem to be fighting for. And this scroll tells why, he said before pulling out the scroll and handing it to the Kage. Meanwhile, though, Kuritsuchi was looking at the baby, barely containing herself from picking it up and playing with it. A dangerous kunoichi of Iwa, but surprisingly a sucker for babies. It was taking all her self-control to just stare at it and keep the smile off her face as her grandfather read the scroll Deidara handed him. Suddenly everybody was shocked as the Tsuchikage started laughing. "Deidara, you're getting a bonus for this," he declared, shocking everyone even further. "Konoha has truly fucked up this time." "What does the scroll say, sir?" Akatsuchi asked. The Tsuchikage motioned to the boy sleeping on his desk. "This brat is the son of Uzumaki Kushina and her secret husband Namikaze Minato." That got everyone outside of Deidara, who already knew, and the Tsuchikage, who was telling them, to growl at the kid and a couple to reach for a kunai. "Don't even think about killing the boy," he ordered as he noticed a couple hands. "Why not? He's the son of that bastard Yondaime. He should be killed right now just to stick it to that fucking bastard." One shouted, "Because Namikaze is already dead. And this boy is valuable, unlike you." He growled, getting everyone to double take at him, again except Deidara since he knew. Seeing as he had their attention, he continued where he stopped. The Yondaime Hokage died because apparently Konoha was attacked by the Kyuubi. He died sealing the fox away, into his own son. He said as he looked down at the child. The boy was a Jinchuriki? That got their attention and made them understand why the boy was valuable. A new weapon for Iwa was always welcome. His mother died in childbirth or something, and the Flash died putting the demon in this boy. And for some reason, Konoha was sending him away rather than training him to be a weapon. Well, thanks to your four stumbling upon him and Deidara from keeping him alive, Iwa now has a third Jinchuriki. And not just any Jinchuriki, but the strongest of them all once trained. They all began to nod as they understood their Kage's reasoning. So what's going to happen to the boy? Kuritsuchi asked as she started to look at the baby again. The Tsuchikage looked at her and could see she seemed to like the child for some reason. He also looked at the rest and noticed outside of Deidara they still looked like they wanted to kill him. I'm going to place the boy, Namikaze Naruto, under your care, Kuritsuchi. You'll raise him up and train him to be a ninja. He'll then be used against Konoha when we finally strike. I can see it now. Konoha destroyed by their own Jinchuriki that they foolishly threw away. How's that for revenge against the Leaf and Namikaze? His own son will destroy the village he died to save. As the Tsuchikage declared this, they all broke out laughing, save for Kuritsuchi, who instead picked up the baby and looked at him. Naruto, huh? Oh, have we all got big plans for you? Start carrying this stuff, Deidara. Kuritsuchi ordered the blonde as she pointed to a large pile of various items. She then walked out the store, not even bothering to see if he would obey. Why do I have to do this, The bomber complained as he picked up the bundles. With his ninja training it was quite easy to carry all the weight. But that didn't stop him from making a fuss about it. Why does a baby need all this shit anyways, Just give it some food and leave it be. This is all just a waste of time, You have no idea what to do with babies, do you, Blondie? She shot back as he caught up with her. She was currently carrying the young Naruto in her arms as they were walking back to the Tsuchikage mansion, her home. The meeting with their cage had finished and Kuritsuchi instantly dragged Deidara off to get supplies for Naruto. When he tried to complain, old Oinuki just ordered him to do it. And an Iwa ninja always follows their orders. Babies need more than just food and a bed. They need diapers, special food cause they can't eat stuff like ice, blankets, clothes, a crib, and maybe a few toys and such. Babies are very high maintenance, but I guess a blonde fool like you wouldn't know that. She explained before taunting him with a smirk. Oh, how Deidara wanted to blow her up. But she was not only the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, she was appointed guardian of the boy she was carrying, and that boy was gonna grow up to be pretty damn important. Blowing them up would be the equivalent of going up to Oinuki and asking him to chop his head off. If anything, the latter would be more merciful. Fine, the baby needs this shit. But why do I have to carry it all on? I just got back from a mission and I'm tired. I haven't even gotten that bonus Oinuki-sama promised me yet. Deidara complained. Kuritsuchi actually paused mid-step as she thought before shrugging her shoulders and walking along. I don't know, I just grabbed who was closest to me. That got the blonde bomber to freeze as his jaw dropped. Just because he was closest to her when she grabbed the brat? Fuck his luck. Deidara started following with his head held low as he cursed any god that would listen to his plight. Alright, now set up the crib over there while I feed him. And then you can go, I'll take care of the rest. Kuritsuchi said as they walked into the mansion. Deidara just nodded numbly and walked towards the area she pointed out to obey. Kuritsuchi on the other hand grabbed the bag with baby food and walked off to the kitchen. She set Naruto down on the table and pulled out a small bottle of formula. As much as she liked babies, she never actually had to keep one. Babysitting missions were her favorite D-ranks back when she was a kid, and now she got a permanent one, technically. Okay, a bottle of this and he should be good. She muttered to herself as she made the bottle for the child sleeping behind her. Or at least formerly sleeping. Naruto seemed to wake shortly after being set down, likely from suddenly being on an uncomfortable table rather than being held by someone, and started screaming his displeasure at his new spot. The resulting scream was enough to make Kuritsuchi drop the bottle, and if not for her ninja training kicking in to catch it, it would have shattered on the floor. She quickly set the bottle down before turning around and picking Naruto up and holding him close. Calm down, little guy, it's okay. It's okay, she muttered softly. When Naruto still kept crying, she sighed and reached for the bottle she had just finished preparing a moment ago. Carefully bringing it to Naruto's mouth for the child to get its formula, she smiled when he quieted down and started to suck out the drink. There you go, you were just hungry, weren't you? She was smiling softly at the child in her arms before heading out to the living room to see if Deidara had finished the crib. God damn this fucking thing, he shouted. Kuritsuchi started laughing seeing the blonde holding up the instructions with all the pieces lying around him as he tried to figure out what went where. At the sound of her laughter, he turned around and glared at her. Why don't you do this, After all, this is for that damn thing in your arms, he shouted. She just kept laughing as she sat down on the couch. No thanks. Now Tsuchikage-sama ordered you to help, so get back to work. His eye twitched and one hand subconsciously reached for his clay as she kept laughing. This was going to be a long night. Nothing, Hokage-sama. I found 2 dead root anbu of Danzos on the way, and then further along I found another 2 in Rin, all dead and their supplies raided. Kakashi reported to the Hokage. After sending Rin out with Naruto, the council was called to decide what to do with the boy. Most called for his death, mainly the civilians. Danzo wanted him to be trained as Konoha's weapon, and only the Inuzuka and Yamanaka clans were willing to adopt the boy into their care. But then Sarutobi said none of that was possible because he had sent the boy away to an undisclosed location with one of his top jonin. Danzo stormed out of the chambers, likely to send the very ninja Kakashi found after her. The civilians were in an uproar, calling for the Hokage to step down, seeing as his senile old head had not killed the demon. And the shinobi side, while slightly annoyed that they weren't even given a choice in the matter, nodded their acceptance as they knew the boy would not have a normal life in Konoha no matter what. After the meeting, the Hokage sent Kakashi out to make sure Rin and Naruto were safe. What of Naruto, and the scroll explaining who and what he is? Sarutobi asked, concern all over his face. If the boy was dead, he'd never forgive himself. Kakashi shook his head. All supplies from Rin were taken, just like the 2 others. And the boy was nowhere to be found. My ninkin could smell others in the area, but they had left a while ago and the scents were faint. Not only that, but one smelled of explosives apparently, so we weren't going to risk it. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, Kakashi concluded. Sarutobi sighed. No, Kakashi, I never should have sent Rin on her own, knowing the danger Danzo posed. And I'm sorry my foolishness cost you the love of your life. I hope you can forgive me, he said as he puffed some of the tobacco in his pipe while Kakashi numbly nodded. My only wish is to know what happened to Naruto. Who has him? Are they taking care of him? Is he even alive? I failed Minato and can do nothing about it. Oh, how he would be ashamed of me. He lamented as his thoughts were of how he thought Naruto was suffering. If he really knew what was going on with the child, he'd likely be cursing himself out for a different reason. 2 years passed and already Kuritsuchi was beginning to regret her long-term babysitting mission. Her father, Kitsuchi, was regretting it ever since he came home a week after the event, and he hadn't even tried to bother with the boy. Even the Tsuchikage was beginning to regret it, and he fucking ordered it. And Deidara wasn't helping by offering to make some baby art every time he saw the child. Naruto was apparently a very problematic child. First off, he barely let anybody in the Tsuchikage mansion get more than 2 hours sleep at a time. Now as ninja, that wouldn't be a problem. In short day, maybe week-long durations. This lasted at least a year before the baby could finally go a whole night without waking. Then there were the diapers. He went through those like they were going out of style. 4 or 5 diaper changes, in the course of a few hours. Kuritsuchi could not remember any baby ever running through those so fast from her younger days. And then there was when he learned to crawl. Now they had to lock him up or tie him down anytime they set him down, otherwise he'd crawl to who knows where. One time Kuritsuchi had set him down and the baby boy had crawled to the door where, if not for Akatsuchi announcing he was about to come in, Naruto would have been stepped on by the giant of a man. But despite the trouble, Kuritsuchi enjoyed taking care of the boy. And the Tsuchikage hadn't seen his granddaughter so happy in years. Despite wanting to blow him up, even Deidara would admit the blonde terror, as he called him, had grown on him slightly. And Akatsuchi was always willing to watch the boy if Kuritsuchi had to go on a mission because he thought that the boy would be a great friend and ninja when he grew up. It also helped that he felt since the boy was under the Tsuchikage's protection, it was an honor to guard him. That was another thing. Naruto wasn't received that well at first to the village of Iwa. A week after Deidara brought him back to the village, the Tsuchikage had made the announcement. Iwa was now in possession of the son of the Flash. Instantly there were cries for the boy's public execution. But Owanuki shot those down by claiming that the boy was also Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi. Most quieted down, seeing the use in another demon weapon for Iwa. And to further silence the rest, he said Naruto was going to be raised specifically to take out Konoha one day. Now while a few of the older ninja hated the boy for his father, nobody dared to attack him. At least not after the first and only attempt. A man had snuck into the Tsuchikage mansion in the middle of the night and tried to stab a kunai through Naruto's head as he slept. But right before he could, He was held in place before getting his head chopped off by Kuritsuchi herself. The next morning they displayed his corpse to the public and told everyone what happened. The Tsuchikage then announced that anybody that tries to hurt the boy would be executed, either instantly or publicly, and no amount of faithful service or spotless records would change it. Try to touch Naruto and you die, by the word of Ryotenben no Oanuki, the Sandame Tsuchikage. Come on Naruto, say Ka-chan. You can do it, say Ka-chan. Kuritsuchi prodded. The boy was sitting in a high chair at the table as she was sitting in front of him smiling, trying to get the boy to talk. The Tsuchikage was sitting at the other end of the table drinking some coffee and finishing his breakfast. It was early morning and he was going to head into the office after his meal to do battle with the cage's mortal enemy, paperwork. But the papers of hell could wait until he finished his eggs. Don't children call their mother figures Ka-san? Oanuki asked, slightly annoyed as she had been trying to get the boy to speak for the past week and it was really grating on his nerves by now. Kuritsuchi just sent a small glare over at him. I'm not his real mother and I'm not that old. I want him to call me Ka-chan and there's nothing you can do about it. She shot back before turning back to the boy and again trying to get him to speak. The old man just sighed. It's my village you annoying little bitch. He mumbled under his breath. Sadly, not quietly enough as she spun her head around at him. The last time someone called her a bitch, well there wasn't enough of the Jonin to send back to the family to bury. Now obviously she couldn't do that to her cage and grandfather, but that didn't mean she wasn't going to just let him call her that. Listen here you, bitch. Both froze with wide eyes and slowly turned their heads to Naruto who was giggling in his chair. He was waving his arms around at their faces, thoroughly enjoying the new funny faces they were looking at him with. Bitch, he repeated, this time they noticed the lisp that carried with the word as his 2-year-old self couldn't properly make the ch sound. Kuritsuchi's eye twitched as her face stayed one of utter shock. His first word, is that. By this time the Tsuchikage had finished his meal and vanished to his office with a shunshin. That paperwork never looked so fun. It's good to be home. Deidara muttered as he walked into Iwa. He had just come off a long-term S-rank mission and his plans were simple. Report his success, get some food, and sleep. As he walked down the main street towards the Tsuchikage's office he paused as a massive killing intent washed over the village. Before anybody could wonder what was going on, it was followed by an equally terrifying voice. Damn you to hell you fucking miserable midget of a man, I will fucking kill you. Maybe I should get my lunch first. Deidara whispered, unable to shake the feeling that the Tsuchikage's office was currently the entrance to the afterlife. Hello dear, Kitsuchi said as he walked into the house that night, returning from a mission himself. He saw that Kuritsuchi was fixing herself dinner as Naruto was in a small area of the living room closed off to be his playpen. How was your day? He asked, utterly exhausted from his own day. Fine, was the quick and surprisingly cold reply. The man could quickly tell something was wrong with his daughter. The last time she had used that voice was after breaking up with her last boyfriend. Which reminds me, I haven't hurt that bastard for making her cry. He thought before shaking the thought out of his head for the moment and looking towards his daughter, who had her back turned to him as she was focusing on her food. What happened? Naruto spoke his first word today. She replied. Kitsuchi looked towards the blonde boy who was happily playing with a red fox plushie. And, why would that be a bad thing? He asked, thoroughly confused. Weren't people happy when a baby learned their first word? He remembered his wife wouldn't shut up for weeks when Kuritsuchi had said her first word. It's the word he learned from Tsuchikage Oji-sama. And what word did he teach the boy? He asked. She stayed silent and he was about to answer when young Naruto decided to say the word that got such funny reactions out of everyone around him. Bitch. Spoken with the cute lisp baby children have. Said baby started giggling like crazy as he saw Kitsuchi's expression and Kuritsuchi flinch from it. He didn't know why but that word made everyone put on a funny face. It was his new favorite toy. Right next to his fox toy. As Kitsuchi got over the shock of the boy cursing he looked over at his daughter who had set her food in the oven to cook before turning around and walking to the living room with an all too sweet smile on her face, completely offset by the tick mark on her forehead and twitching left eye. Say, you wouldn't happen to know where Tsuchikage-sama is, would you? She asked in silky sweet tones. Kitsuchi numbly shook his head before she turned around and walked back towards the kitchen. As soon as she left, Kitsuchi promptly got up and left the building. The Tsuchikage mansion was not going to be a safe place for the foreseeable future. He went into the village and rented out a hotel room for a week, hoping his daughter would get over it by then. "What's going on, Ka-chan?" a young blonde boy asked. He was wearing a red shirt with the Iwa symbol stitched into its front in white with gray shorts. On his feet were some shinobi sandals colored black. His right hand was rubbing his face as it was still early morning while his left was holding a small fox-stuffed animal by the neck. Little did he know a certain demon was cringing at that fact. "I'm busy, Naruto. Go outside and practice molding your chakra or something," replied a woman with black hair and violet eyes. She was wearing a tight-fitting black short-sleeved shirt and a red skirt. She was messing with something in front of her that Naruto couldn't see because he was behind her. When he tried to walk around her to see what she was doing, she sighed and quickly grabbed him and stormed out of the house before he saw it. "I said out," she shouted as she tossed him into the front yard. Naruto landed on his bum and dropped the fox toy as he pouted at Kuritsuchi being so secretive. "Geez, what's her problem today?" Naruto muttered as he grabbed his toy and walked off to the small park Iwa had. It wasn't like the many massive parks in Konoha, mainly because Iwa wasn't in a forest but rather Iwa was located in the center of a large valley surrounded by the mountains of Tsuchi no Kuni. So as such, the few parks Iwa had were small. Naruto went to the main one and just hopped down on the swing set as he lightly swung himself with his toy in his lap. Ka-chan sure was hiding something. "I just wish I knew what, damn it. Don't let Kuro-chan hear you swear, Gaki, she'll tear you a new one." Naruto's eyes shot up at the voice to see the only other blonde in Iwa walking up to him. "Remember last time she found out you cursed?" he said with a smirk. Naruto jumped out of the swing and ran up and hugged the Jonin. "Dei ni-san," he cheered. Deidara just chuckled a bit. Sure, he at first thought the kid was nothing but trouble, but after he grew up a bit and could walk and talk, the blonde grew on him. He just seemed to draw people to him for some reason. The boy had also come to start calling him Ni-san, which just made everybody laugh for a while. To get back at what was at first a humiliation to him, Deidara started calling him Gaki, much to everyone's amusement. But after a while, the two just got close and the Ni-san, Gaki exchange just stuck. "Why are you here, Ni-san? Didn't Tsuchikage Oji-sama give you a mission?" Naruto asked as he stepped back and looked up to his face. Deidara smirked down at the kid as he ruffled his hair. "Like some measly A rank is gonna keep me out of town for long." "Oh hey, did you hear? I've got a bingo book listing now," he said as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black book before flipping through it and handing it to the boy, open to a specific page. Naruto took it and started reading. Name, Deidara. Title, Iwa's Mad Bomber. Rank, Jonin. Village, Iwa. Threat level, A rank. Bounty, 560 million ryo offered by Kumo and Konoha. Skill set, explosive kinjutsu known only to Iwa, but Kuden Keke Genkai. Orders, all ninja B rank and below are to flee on sight in A rank plus or to use extreme caution. Target is known to change the landscape with his jutsus and prefers long-range combat. As Naruto finished reading, he looked up to the smirking blonde with stars in his eyes. This is totally awesome. You rock, Ni-san. Deidara chuckled as he took the bingo book back. Don't you know it? The only problem I have with it is my title. I'm not a mad bomber, I'm an artist. I'd much rather be known as Iwa's explosive artist. After all, art. He trailed off, but Naruto knew what he was saying. As a bang, he shouted. Unlike most of Iwa, Naruto thought Deidara's explosives were great and he loved watching him make sculptures just to blow them up. Deidara laughed and picked the little boy up and placed him on his shoulders. That's right, Gaki. At least you appreciate my talent. That's cause the big booms are really loud and cool. Naruto said excitedly as Deidara laughed. The Jonin started walking back towards the Tsuchikage mansion with Naruto on his shoulders talking about how secretive his Ka-chan was being earlier. Now Deidara knew exactly why, but feigned ignorance to the child to keep him out of the loop. This was the real reason he finished his mission quickly, not that it was hard to begin with. As they got to the door, Deidara knocked. Who is it? Came Kuritsuchi's voice. Deidara, I've got the Gaki with me too. He called back. She said it was fine for them to come in and Deidara did, but then quickly tossed up a small flash grenade in Naruto's eyes. Ah, Dei Ni-san. You trying to blind me? The boy shouted out and started rubbing his eyes. His fox toy dropped on the floor. As his vision slowly returned, he saw a couple blurs standing in the living room. "Happy birthday, Naruto-kun," came the loud cheer from Kuretsuchi, Akatsuchi and Deidara. Naruto's vision finally got back to normal as he looked and saw his Ka-chan and aka Ni-chan, as he called Akatsuchi, standing behind the table with a large white cake that read, "Happy 5th birthday," on it in red. Naruto instantly started grinning as Deidara set him down and he ran up and hugged Kuretsuchi. "You forgot it was your birthday, didn't you, Naruto-kun?" she asked with a slight smile. He looked away in embarrassment as she laughed. "Whatever am I going to do with you? Probably kick me out and start smooching Daini-san like you do when Oji-sama isn't around," he muttered. She froze, her face turning slightly red. As did Deidara's, but nobody noticed it before Naruto ran away from her. "You damn brat." Before she could grab him, Naruto had climbed the giant form of Akatsuchi and was hiding behind his head. "Help, aka Ni-chan," he cried out as Akatsuchi laughed. The large man just grabbed the boy and held him even higher so that his Ka-chan couldn't get to him without jumping up. Naruto and the big man laughed as she fumed that he was out of her reach before she leveled a glare at Akatsuchi. "Put him down now so I can punish him for that remark." Akatsuchi started to lower him and Naruto's face paled more and more as the ground became closer. Just as Kuretsuchi was about to grab him and hit him, Akatsuchi tossed him into the air, getting the boy to cry out in joy and start laughing. "Ah, just let it go, Kuretsuchi. Naruto didn't mean it," the big man said as he caught the boy just to toss him right back up. Kuretsuchi sighed but had a smile on her face as she watched the boy smile and laugh as he was repeatedly tossed up high and caught. Finally Akatsuchi caught him but didn't toss him back up. "Anyways, Naruto-kun, you ready for your cake?" "Cake," he shouted in happiness. The big man set him down as the three jonin laughed. The rest of the day was spent just playing around with the boy and having fun with him. Kuretsuchi had gotten him a large set of training kunai and shuriken since he really wanted to be a ninja. They would have trained him in the shinobi arts anyways, but him wanting it made it much easier to get the boy ready. Akatsuchi had used his skill in making golems to make a life-size statue of him that could move around if a little chakra was pushed into it. And then towards the end of the night, they all went outside and Deidara put on a little fireworks show for the boy. All in all, it was a great day for the blonde Jinchuriki. The next day had Kuretsuchi bringing Naruto to the Tsuchikage's office at noon. The old man had something to tell Naruto and it was decided he'd learn of it after his 5th birthday. The two were led into his office and saw he was alone, his Anbu being out completing other orders. Besides, he was only meeting with his granddaughter, an Iwa Jonin with a flawless loyal record, and a young boy that couldn't even fight yet. "Good afternoon, you two. Enjoy yourself yesterday, Naruto?" "You bet, Oji-sama. The cake was awesome. Ka-chan made sure to save a slice for you back home," Naruto exclaimed as he ran up to his desk and was just smiling at the cage. Owanuki smirked and glanced up to Kuretsuchi, who just had a slight smile on her face. She knew what this was about and personally felt the meeting could go either way. It could embolden Naruto to Iwa and Konoha's eventual destruction, or it could get him to turn traitor and want to leave. If the latter option happened, they would have no choice but to rip out his demon and put it in someone else, and that would kill him. Kuretsuchi really became close to the young blonde and wanted to avoid that at all costs, but she knew how things worked in a shinobi village. First comes your loyalty to your village and cage, then to your family and friends. "How thoughtful. Thank you, Kuretsuchi," he said as she sat down and then held Naruto in her lap. "Now Naruto, I'm going to tell you two things today. It was decided when you were brought to us that you would learn this information when you turn 5. At Kuretsuchi's insistence, we held off on telling you this on your birthday. Instead, letting you enjoy yourself and not be bothered with it. But now is the time you will. Understand so far?" Owanuki asked as the young blonde nodded his head with a serious expression on his face. "You weren't born in Iwa and we aren't your family. Rather, you were born in Konoha. But Konoha is the enemy. Why would you guys be so nice to the enemy? I don't believe you. I call bull," Naruto exclaimed before getting slapped in the back of the head by his Ka-chan. "Language, Naruto-kun. He will get to that. Let him finish and then you'll understand why we're taking such good care of you," Kuretsuchi said as Naruto rubbed his head. He nodded and looked back to the Tsuchikage, who had a neutral expression on his face. Do not interrupt me again, Naruto, or the punishment will be severe. After a yes, Tsuchikage-sama, the old man continued. Now, as I was saying, you were born in Konoha. In fact, you are the son of one Uzumaki Kushina and the Konoha no Kiroi Senku, Namikaze Minato. He paused to let that info sink in as Naruto's face went blank. Not only was he born in the village Iwa hated, he was the son of their most hated enemy. Nothing made sense to him. Iwa hated anything to do with those tree huggers, as they put it. They wanted nothing more than to resurrect that bastard Flash, just so they could have the pleasure of killing him themselves. Yet he was the son of their greatest enemy, and he was being taken care of by the Tsuchikage's family. Why? He muttered. The old cage let him get away with talking when he was supposed to be quiet, but let it slide since it was a viable question. That is the other piece of information I will be telling you. 5 years ago, on the day you were born, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked Konoha. We are unsure of the how or why, but the demon appeared and went on a rampage. Your mother apparently died somehow that day, likely either childbirth or from the fox itself. Your father took the newborn you and saved the village by sacrificing his life to make you a Jinchuriki. At Naruto's confused expression, Kuritsuchi butted in. Lift your shirt, Naruto-kun. He did and wondered what she wanted. Now channel chakra towards your stomach. Again he did and his eyes widened as a complex ceiling array faded into sight. A Jinchuriki is a human with a demon inside them. Kyuubi is right behind that seal, Naruto-kun. She told him as Naruto was now staring in shock at his stomach like he could explode at any moment. You can calm down, boy. The seal is fine and the fox isn't going to get out. Oinuki said as Naruto was still staring at the design. If that bastard Flash was good at anything, it was his Fuinjutsu. But anyways, this is why you were kept alive. You're a demon weapon, Naruto. Naruto dropped his shirt before looking up at the Tsuchikage in childlike curiosity. Okay, but if I was born in Konoha and I'm the son of their greatest hero, then how come I'm here with their biggest enemies? I mean, wouldn't they be treating me like royalty and training me to fight for them? He asked. The Tsuchikage snorted. Because they weren't treating you like royalty. Seeing him confused, Oinuki pulled out a scroll. You were being sent out of the village to be raised off on the border by civilians. However, some of Konoha's ninja apparently didn't like this decision and a fight broke out between your protector and the others. Deidara and his team stumbled across the aftermath and found that you were the only one alive. They read this exact scroll, which they found in your protector's pouch, and that convinced them to bring you here. I decided you would be raised by Iwa and placed under Kuritsuchi's care. And we will train you to not only use your demonic power but give you all the skills you need to take out Konoha with us. If you don't want to attack them, then read the scroll the Hokage wrote when he kicked you out. That'll be more than enough to convince you that those cursed tree lovers need to die. He said as he handed the scroll to the young blonde. Dear Jin, it's Hiruzen, how are you? I know you must be wondering why there is now a Jonin and newborn there with you, but I have a favor to ask of you. You see, the Kyuubi has attacked Konoha and Minato sacrificed his life to seal the best into his son, the boy my Jonin brought. His mother Uzumaki Kushina is also dead. I have a couple questions as to how this all happened, but that is not the point right now. When word of how our beloved Yondaime defeated the beast reached the civilians, they started to cry out for the boy's death. Even many of my own ninja forces are rallying towards the cause. I cannot let the son of their hero and the very reason they're alive be killed for their foolish hatred. So I'm sending him to you. I know from your last visit, you and your wife were wanting to adopt a child. So I'm asking you to take young Naruto here. I just have few things to ask. Treat the boy as just that, a boy. He is not the demon within him like the idiots here think. Also, never tell him of his heritage as the son of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. Iwa would like nothing better than to get some twisted revenge on Minato by killing his child. So raise him as your own. Naruto must not be told who he really is. Never bring him to Konoha. Please follow this above all else. Our sensors could likely feel the demon within the boy, and then that would alert everyone as to who he is and defeat the purpose of sending him away. If you must bring him here, then alert me beforehand so that I can set things up so that he won't be discovered. But I pray you'll never have reason to. And finally, do not train him in any ninja arts. I know you are a civilian, but you're also friends with a few ninja. If Naruto receives ninja training, he may stumble onto what he contains. If that happens, there's no telling what could happen. So to avoid that, do not let him so much as learn how to mold chakra. I'm sorry for forcing this on you, but I hope you understand and will still raise the boy. Naruto has gone through more than most others have, and it hasn't even been a day since he was born. Signed Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. As Naruto finished, his face was held down and the letter was set back on the desk. Kuretsuchi was worried about how Naruto would react because this would decide if he lives or dies. Oinuki on the other hand was quite confident in what the boy would say. Well, Naruto, do you see why we want you to help us destroy Konoha? They wanted to kill the son of their hero because he was a hero. Naruto mumbled, I mean, if their Yondaime didn't put the Kyuubi in me, then they all would have died, right? So I should be a hero to them. But they wanted to kill me. Naruto then looked up, his eyes full of anger and determination. Well, I'll show them. They wanted to kill me cause they thought I was a demon, so I'll show them a real demon. The only one I'll spare is the Hokage for protecting me. The rest of the village can go and die. Oinuki smirked as Kuretsuchi let out the breath she didn't realize she was holding. Good choice, Naruto. You start training in a week. The training was tough, no denying that. As soon as they had left the office, Kuretsuchi had gone over the basics of what he would be taught. Naruto was told the training would start next week, but she felt that she could start him on the intellectual training right away. What this meant was memorizing the rules of being an Iwa shinobi and some small-scale tactics lessons. And to help him further, she taught him shogi, an intelligence game formerly used to test battle plans. And Naruto absolutely sucked at it, losing to even Akatsuchi, who was well known for being a horrible shogi player. But he was just starting out, so he still had tons of room for improvement. If he was still losing to the giant years later, then there would be concerns. After a week of training his mind, Kuretsuchi started training his body. She started off by getting him weighted wristbands and ankle bands. Starting him off small, just 10 pounds per arm and 15 per leg. But he was only 5, so it was still pretty tough for him. After giving him the weights, she had him run laps around the mansion and then push-ups and sit-ups without breaks. And that was just a warm-up. Poor little boy collapsed on the ground after the laps, which really shocked Kuretsuchi since the kid never ran out of energy. Exhaustion and Naruto were never used in the same sentence. Still, after a couple weeks he could do everything she told him to do without a problem. To encourage and help him along, Kuretsuchi would do the exercises with him. She also had him working on chakra control exercises and was still teaching him other things like basic math and other things a ninja would need to know. However, she wasn't going to teach him any jutsu. Not yet anyways. There were a couple reasons, but the main was that the academy and then his Jonin sensei would teach him those. Over time she also upgraded his weights by 5 pounds each. He was still a kid, so she was taking it slow. He was training harder than any other child his age in the village, but he wasn't being forced to become a super-powered killer right off the bat. Okay, Naruto-kun, take 5. We'll start on the katas afterwards. Kuretsuchi said. She was wearing her full ninja gear because she was going to be leaving for a mission that night. Oinuki said he was going to have someone watch the kid and keep up his training, so she wasn't worried. She figured he'd be fine for a few days. Finally, said energetic blonde dropped down on the ground and was breathing heavily. She had upgraded his weights today, so he was tired even though he was used to the exercises by now. He was wearing a black short-sleeved shirt and had on dark blue shorts and shinobi sandals of the same color. You're a slave driver, Ka-chan, I swear. Kuretsuchi sighed and shook her head. What did I tell you about complaining? Naruto paled. Complaining gets me double the workout. He muttered. Kuretsuchi smirked as she stood over him. Naruto was easily getting scared she was going to do something to him. She reached down with one hand and he closed his eyes to avoid seeing what he was going to do. Ow, 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 ow. Naruto started rapidly repeating as she started pulling him to his feet by the ear. Since I have a mission later today, I can't double the workout for you. So instead, we're going to finish up the routine without any breaks for the rest of the day. She smirked as he stared at her horrified. Now get into the first stance so that we can start. And if you slack off, then when I get back from my mission, you will be doing a lot more than just this. She threatened as he quickly got into position. Ah, the joys of teaching. So what am I doing, Oji-sama? Naruto asked. He was standing at the main gate to the village with Onuki standing right next to him. Unsurprisingly, the 5-year-old was the same height as the old cage. I thought you were gonna have someone come train me while Ka-chan is gone. Sort of. Just they're not coming here to train you. You're going to him. Onuki answered. He then pointed ahead to a man that was walking up to the gate. He had red hair done up in a ponytail and a red beard covering the lower half of his face. Across his nose was a black strap and his headband was more of a brown crown with a gold ring looped into the right side. He looked like the standard Jonin uniform, only the flak jacket was brown while the rest was purple. Naruto, meet Roshi. He will be training you for the next 2 weeks. So this is the kid, Onuki-sama? Roshi asked as he walked up. He knelt down and put a hand to his chin as he looked him in the eyes long and hard before smirking. I think I can work with this brat. This comment of course got said Brat's attention. I'm not a brat. My name is Namikaze Naruto and I'm gonna be the strongest ninja in Iwa. He shouted. Roshi laughed as Onuki smirked. Oh yeah, I can definitely work with the brat for a couple weeks. Well come on kid, we've got a bit of training to do. He said before standing up and leaving the way he came up. Naruto was a little confused but just gave a short bow to Onuki before heading after the taller man. So what are you gonna teach me? Naruto asked as the two were walking down a mountain path away from Iwa. Roshi actually looked surprised and turned his head down to face him. Onuki didn't tell you? Naruto shook his head, no, causing Roshi to sigh. Did he tell you anything about me or why I don't live in the village? Again the blonde shook his head no. Sigh, that old midget is gonna get himself in trouble one of these days. Alright, I guess I better explain. I know you're the Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko. Well I am the Jinchuriki to the Yanbi no Saru. I am going to teach you how to contact and draw on your demon's power. We couldn't do that back home? Naruto asked. He was surprised that there were more like him out there, but after some thought figured he was being stupid, since how else would he know so much about his condition if there weren't? Learning how to use a bijuu's power is very dangerous. If you don't have total control then you could draw too much and your demon could take over. If Kyuubi is anything like Yanbi, then it hates being trapped in a human, so it would likely start killing any and everybody it were to come across in vengeance. That's why we're heading to my home out here in the mountains. I left Iwa with Onuki's permission years ago with the promise that I wouldn't come back until I had total control over the Yanbi. Roshi explained as they came up on a small hut next to a lake. The hut wasn't much, it looked like it was created through Doden Jutsu, seeing as how it literally just seemed like it one day sprouted from the ground. Roshi first led Naruto inside and showed him the single room. Just a bed in one corner and a small pit in the center for him to start a fire. A few clothes and tools were hanging on the walls, but overall it was very bare. Alright Naruto. Now, tell me what you can do now. I'm pretty strong for my age according to Ka-chan. And I have decent chakra control compared to how much chakra I have. The only things I've really been taught though are tree walking and smart stuff like math and shogi. Naruto said. Roshi looked him over to see if the boy was lying or anything, but could tell he wasn't. He really wasn't taught much yet, which made Roshi wonder why Onuki wanted him to start learning how to use Kyuubi's chakra already. Okay then, do you know how to meditate? Huh? Naruto asked as he tilted his head to the side. Roshi let out a sigh and rubbed his hand over his face. Alright, I guess that's first then. I want you to sit down and stay still. Clear your mind of just about everything, he said as he sat down and crossed his legs. Naruto copied him as Roshi started a fire and set a pot with some water from the lake he had to boil. In order to use your bijuu's chakra you have to either make a deal with the beast or force it to hand the stuff over. The Yanbi in me hates humans with a passion and refuses to make any deal, so I have to force it. Iwa's other Jinchuriki, Han, has the Gobi no Urukama. He was able to set up a deal with his bijuu and as such has a far easier time controlling its power than I do. Then why isn't he teaching me, Roshi-san? Naruto asked. Roshi shook his head. It's because of Han's personality and because of who you are. Naruto looked confused, so Roshi explained. Han fought in the Second and Third Great Wars. He hates Konoha and anything related to it. Your father was the Yondaime Hokage. Han would kill you on sight. Tsuchikage's orders be damned. It also doesn't help that you're very close to Onuki and his family. You see, Han has been treated like a monster since the day he had the Gobi stuck in him. And the Niodame Tsuchikage ordered him to live outside the village, mainly because everyone was scared that he might lose control. This has caused Han to hate Iwa. He won't go rogue because he knows he'll just be hunted and killed and the gobi would just be shoved into someone else. But at the same time he wants nothing to do with any of us. He barely tolerates me because I have the Yonbi. But you, Kyuubi or not, you represent everything he hates or wanted. You're allowed to live in the village, with Oanuki and his family no less. You haven't ever been treated like a monster in Iwa, despite having the strongest of them all inside you. Add in your heritage of Iwa's greatest foe and to Han you're nothing more than a bastard that has everything he's ever wanted because of everything he's ever hated. Oh, now, clear your mind. Just sit there and think about Kyuubi. If you're doing it right you should be drawn into the seal to speak with the beast. Roshi explained as Naruto nodded and closed his eyes. Roshi was silent as he poured himself some tea and took a drink, just waiting for Naruto to speak. He didn't want to break Naruto's focus, but at the same time he was also a very patient man and just sitting and waiting while drinking some tea was a very relaxing way to train the boy. About half an hour later Naruto sighed. I don't think it's working. So you just sat still for half an hour without contacting Kyuubi or anything? Naruto nodded. Oh well, we've got 2 weeks for you to contact the beast. Just keep trying for the rest of the day. Tomorrow I'll show you water walking to help with your chakra control. And then we can do a few simple exercises to tire you out a bit. It's usually easier to make contact when you're tired, Roshi said. Naruto again nodded and asked if he could have some tea while he tried to think about meeting his inner demon. Such was how the next few days would go. Get up, meditate for an hour or two, attempt water walking for another hour or so, and then physical exercise until Roshi told him to stop. A simple meal and then meditating for the rest of the night until he fell asleep. Naruto got the hang of water walking on the 3rd day, able to make it all the way to the center of the lake and back without falling or sinking. So Roshi added running laps on the lake to the boy's physical exercise. Needless to say, the blonde started getting exhausted a little more. Jinchuriki or not, there was a limit to a 5-year-old's stamina. Meals would be fish that Roshi would catch while Naruto was training or some wild deer or boar he hunted from the lightwoods around them. The elder Jinchuriki was patient with the blonde but also expected more and wouldn't let him stop until he was satisfied. And he was starting to think that perhaps there was something about his seal that was stopping Naruto from contacting the fox too early in life. He had managed to reach the Yonbi after meditating for a few hours on his 2nd try. Naruto still hadn't made any progress. Either the boy couldn't properly clear his mind or the seal was interfering somehow. But at the end of the 1st day he was proven wrong. Roshi walked back into the hut with a small bundle of fish over his shoulder. Alright Naruto, time for some dinner, he muttered as he sat down across from the boy who was sitting cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed. When Roshi didn't get an answer he looked at the boy and snapped his fingers. This still got no response, causing the red-haired man to smirk. Brat finally did it, huh? Where am I? Naruto spoke to himself as he looked around. He was standing in what looked like a sewer with a few leaky pipes dripping water all over. He was just wandering aimlessly as he tried to figure out what was going on. He was practicing his meditating while Roshi went fishing when suddenly he just woke up on his back in a sewer he'd never seen before. Was it a dream of some kind? Did he pass out and Roshi took him back to Iwa and toss him in the sewers for failing to contact Kyuubi? Naruto just didn't know. As he kept walking he soon came upon a large room. One wall of the room was a large barred cage. The lock covered by a small slip of paper with the kanji for seal written on it. No way, Naruto muttered as he started to piece together where he was. So the warden finally visits his prisoner. I was wondering when I'd see you human. A dark and loud voice spoke out. Naruto's eyes were firmly set on the darkness beyond the cage as a large red eye opened up to stare back at him. Well, you're a lot younger than I expected you to be when we had our first meeting. Slowly another eye opened up and a large red fox seemed to fade into view. It was easily as tall as the cage it was in and its eyes just screamed pain and suffering to anybody that angered it. But the thing that caught the young blonde's attention was the 9 long red tails that flowed behind the beast. You're the Kyuubi, aren't you? Naruto asked as he took a few steps closer to the cage. I am. Now what can I do for you, little human? The fox asked as it lowered its head to the ground to try and be closer to eye level with the boy. Naruto just walked up a little closer to the cage as he stared at the Biju with a blank face. After a few minutes of silence, the fox was starting to get a little annoyed that the boy was still just staring at him. "Do you want something, or am I just that interesting boy?" he asked with a slight amount of anger in his voice. Naruto suddenly seemed to snap out of whatever he was doing and smiled sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. "Sorry, it's just I can't believe I did it. I've been trying to talk to you for about a week." The fox just rolled its eyes as the boy then cleared his throat. "Okay, what I'm here for is to learn how to use your power. Roshi-san said to try and make a deal with you if I could and to force you if I couldn't. So let's make a deal. Is there anything you want that I can get you in return for you giving me your power when I need it?" Naruto asked, trying to sound mature and businesslike. "My freedom would be nice, boy. Sorry, but Roshi-san said that's the one thing I have to refuse no matter what. Anything else though is possible if Tsuchikage Oji-sama says okay." Naruto answered right away. The fox kept its eyes focused on Naruto as it thought about what it could get from him. Sleeping in a cage was definitely a very boring existence. If he refused, then the boy would just train and force it, which due to the seal he could do. But if Kyuubi made a deal, then he could possibly get his freedom anyways by having the boy accidentally draw too much power and break the seal. He could do that if he was being forced to, but it would be harder and take more. "I want to destroy the village that imprisoned me for so long and kill a certain man," the fox told him. Naruto squinted his eyes as he looked up at the great demon. "Konoha put you in me when I was born, but he hasn't taken you out because they want me to use you. Plus it's only been 5 years, that's not very long according to Ka-chan." The fox surprised Naruto when it started laughing. "5 years? You think that's all I've been imprisoned for? Here's a newsflash for you, boy. That place you call Konoha has had me for near 100 years. It shouted. Naruto's eyes were wide as he stared at the beast. "I was first sealed into the wife of their Shodai Hokage. Then before she died I was transferred into a young girl. And just as I managed to get my freedom and exact some well-deserved revenge on the village for keeping me prisoner, that girl's lover, the Yondaime Hokage, shoves me into you." Naruto was now staring, mouth wide open, at the demon. "The Yondaime's lover? That was my mother. You mean you were sealed in my Okawa-san?" Naruto shouted. The fox looked wide-eyed for a second before looking closely at the boy. It then broke into a grin after a few seconds. "Now this is a surprise. I thought that bastard just grabbed some random child after I got free, but he used his own son. Ha 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 ha. What a bastard. To seal me, an entity of pure hatred and malevolence, into his own child. And people call me evil." The fox just kept laughing as Naruto was now thinking that his mother was the previous Jinchuriki to the fox. From what he was told by Roshi, a Jinchuriki dies once their demon is removed. All he knew was his mother died in the attack somehow. Well, now he knew she died at the very start of the attack. Naruto then shook his head trying to get back to the deal. "So you want to destroy Konoha and kill someone? Is this guy from Iwa?" Naruto shouted since the fox was still laughing. Kyuubi looked down at the boy as it slowly stopped its laughing. "No, he is not. He left his village before I was sealed into my first host. He also ripped me out of your mother but then placed me under a genjutsu before I could kill him," the fox explained. Naruto nodded. "Okay then, I think Tsuchikage Oji-sama will be alright with those terms. I just gotta let him know before we agree to it," Naruto said before he looked around. "Say Kyuubi, do you know how to get out of here?" he asked as he looked back up at the giant. The fox deadpanned at the boy before sighing. "Focus on the real world and you should leave. Now that you know what this place looks like, you should be able to get here faster on your own as well. Now leave me," the fox explained, then ordered the boy. Naruto just gave a slight nod before closing his eyes and focusing. It wasn't long before he faded out of sight. Kyuubi stared at where he was for a few seconds before sighing and closing its eyes. "Kid is interesting, I'll give him that much. Not once did he look at me with fear in his eyes. That takes guts." The next week was far harder than learning to contact the fox apparently. After Naruto woke up and told Roshi that he had contacted the fox and what the Biju wanted, Roshi wrote it down on a scroll and used a messenger hawk he had to see if Oanuki would approve of the terms so that Naruto could begin using Kyuubi's chakra safely. So Roshi spent the time waiting by showing Naruto just what he'd be able to do with the Biju's power. He took him to the lake where he then started channeling chakra from the Yanbi. Roshi was soon covered in a brownish-red cloak of energy that shaped itself into the shape of a monkey with 3 tails. I've almost got total control over my demon. This is something all Jinchuriki can do, the chakra cloak. All it is the demonic chakra leaking out of your body and taking on the shape of your beast around you. This grants you better defensive abilities along with greater strength and speed. However, without training you can lose yourself to the beast. While I'm like this, I have a much harder time holding back from flat out obliterating my enemies and from just going around destroying everything around me. He explained as he turned off the cloak. All Jinchuriki also gain something unique depending on the Biju that can be accessed even without using their chakra. For example, watch. He then turned and started making hand signs before spitting out a large glob of lava that started steaming and cooling when it hit the lake's surface. By having the Yanbi within me, I can use Yotan Jutsu. Lava release. Normally this is only for those with the Kekkei Genkei, however I gained it due to my Biju. Cool. Does this mean I have some super awesome power from Kyuubi? Naruto shouted as he stared at Roshi with stars in his eyes. Said man took a moment to bask in the child's awe before getting serious again. You should, but I don't know what it will be. Han, the other Jinchuriki, has Juten abilities. Steam release. You might get another element or something completely different. I've heard from Iwa's spies that the current Hachibi Jinchuriki didn't gain an elemental ability from his Biju. Neither did the Sanbis if the reports are right, Roshi said as an afterthought. Naruto nodded and started thinking about what he could have when Roshi spoke up again. Even if Oinuki says no to Kyuubi's terms and you have to force it, you'll still get whatever ability the seal grants you in addition to its chakra. And before you even think about it, no. Do not go into the seal and ask the fox about this. Wait until we get the old midget's answer and then you can talk to the fox about it. Naruto sighed but nodded. The two spent the rest of the day sparring on the lake to help Naruto focus and build up his strength. The next morning however was eventful. The hawk returned with Oinuki's response, which was as expected. So long as Kyuubi's target wasn't an Iwa shinobi they were agreeable terms and Naruto was clear to proceed. After breakfast, Roshi told Naruto to meditate and work out the finer points with the fox. Since the boy knew what to look for in his head, he managed to reach his mindscape in about 10 minutes and was standing in front of the cage holding the mighty Biju. So, I'm guessing you have your leader's answer? Kyuubi stated as he once more lowered his head to be closer to the child. Tsuchikage Oji-sama said that so long as your target isn't from Iwa and doesn't later become a valuable part of Iwa's forces, we're free to kill him on sight. Naruto said as he walked a bit closer to the cage. Kyuubi smirked at getting what it wanted as Naruto tilted his head and squinted his eyes. So how does this work exactly? Do you just give me chakra when I ask and that's it? Or is there some kind of long and complicated thing I gotta do? Kyuubi was surprised but is the fact from the boy. He had honestly expected that to be it, a quick confirmation and then he'd be left alone to be the boy's secret power. Now he could see that he might be able to milk a slight few comforts from the boy without harm. Well, for one, we need to establish a mental link so that we can speak with one another without you having to come into the seal. This will make it easier to give you my chakra, as well as let you speak with me through your thoughts so I can help you in other matters if I am able. A side effect is it will let me see and experience the world through you, so I'll know what's going on around you without you having to explain it. The demon explained. Naruto nodded, finding it agreeable. Also, if possible, could you change this cage? I hate this sewer and would prefer something more comfortable. How do I do that? Naruto asked as he tilted his head to the side in a way that would have had women screaming, kawaii, and hugging him. Kyuubi shrugged its shoulders, or did whatever the fox equivalent of the action would be. I don't know. This is your mind, you should control its appearance. Kyuubi muttered as it didn't know itself. Naruto just nodded and closed his eyes and focused. Kyuubi could feel the boy channeling his chakra as well as his own demonic chakra subconsciously without realizing it. There was a large flash of red light and suddenly the area looked like the lake and forested mountain range that Naruto was currently with Roshi at. Kyuubi also noticed that its cage was gone, replaced by a rather large collar with a black gem shaped like the kanji for seal. Seeing that it was out of the cage, Kyuubi smirked. It was quite fine with its new arrangements. Thank you, child. This will work nicely. No problem. Naruto said as he was gasping and trying to catch his breath. He had just focused on the area he wanted and suddenly felt really drained. But Kyuubi was happy with it, so maybe it would be nicer to him and help him out some more. So how do we make that mental link? He asked as he took a seat on the ground next to the Biju. Kyuubi looked down at the boy before using one of its tails to tap him in the center of his forehead. Done. Wait, that's it? Yes, that's it. That was kinda lame. Not everything is some large and flashy technique kit. Kyuubi muttered as it curled itself into a ball, facing Naruto. Now is there anything else? I don't think so. Oh wait. Roshi-san said that because you're in me I get some kind of cool ability in addition to your chakra. What is it? Naruto asked as he stood back up and got ready to leave. Oh that. You've gained regeneration. Regener wa? Naruto asked with a clueless look on his face. Regeneration. The fox repeated. It means that you can and will heal from any non-fatal wound. If you get a cut, it'll be gone in minutes. If you break a few bones, they'll be fixed in a day. If someone chops off your arm, it'll be back in a few weeks or months. You can and will heal from any non-fatal wound. This also means you can't get sick, and poisons at their worst will make you feel ill, but they can't flat out kill you. Whatever doesn't kill you, will always be fixed. Kyuubi explained to the boy. Naruto looked a little put down that he didn't get some kind of amazing jutsu style, but understood that healing and never getting sick were also blessings. It meant he could be an even greater ninja and would never have to worry about getting hurt too badly. Okay, thanks Kyuubi-san. I'll talk to you later I guess. Naruto said as he faded out of the newly redesigned mindscape. Kyuubi just closed its eyes and went back to sleep, wondering how things would be now that the deal was made. After the meeting, Naruto explained everything to Roshi. The man grinned at Naruto when told of his regeneration. He then said he needed to test it and quickly tossed a kunai which stabbed him in the arm. After some cursing from the boy and laughing from the man, they watched as the wound seemed to steam as it closed before their eyes. Roshi also asked him to try and pull on Kyuubi's chakra so that they could see how it affected him. Said Fox told him he couldn't handle a tail's worth of power yet because he was too young, but still gave him some power which made his eyes turn red with slitted pupils as well as lengthening his incisors and thickening his whisker marks. Naruto explained that his young body couldn't handle a lot of power and Roshi nodded, saying he expected as much. He then had Naruto go through a few exercises to let him see the difference Kyuubi's chakra made, and the boy was surprised that everything seemed incredibly easy. After he finished the exercises he let go of his hold on Kyuubi's chakra and seemed to stare at his hands in wonder and awe. They spent the rest of the day fishing while Roshi explained some of the do's and don'ts of his Biju chakra before going to sleep. Now that his training with Roshi was done, he would return to Iwa in the morning. Nice to see you again Naruto-kun. I hope you're ready for some more training tomorrow. Kuretsuchi said as she met the boy and Roshi at Iwa's gates. The boy just ran up and gave her a hug while Roshi kept up his slower pace. I missed you Ka-chan. But now, I'm stronger than ever. Just you wait, soon I'll be a better ninja than you are. The girl just smiled at him before giving a short bow to Roshi. Thanks for training him Roshi-sama. I'll take him back from here. Do you have anything for Tsuchikage-sama or will you just be leaving again? She asked. Not known to many, Kuretsuchi highly respected the Yonbi Jinchuriki for his skill and ability with Yotan techniques. Especially because she carried that bloodline herself from her mother's side. Give him this scroll. It just tells him what I trained the boy with. Wasn't much really. I just taught him water walking and how to draw on Kyuubi's power. It also lists what he gained from the fox and what changes he goes through when he uses its power. He said as he handed her a scroll. Roshi then ruffled the young blonde's hair before leaving for his hut once more. Kuretsuchi just said her thanks and goodbye before leading Naruto to the Tsuchikage's office. She needed to give him the scroll and they both wanted to know what Naruto could do now. Welcome back Naruto. I trust you've accomplished the training? Oinuki asked. In all honesty, he knew he did. He just had to keep up with appearances though, so he didn't mention it. Naruto stood in front of his desk and nodded enthusiastically to his superior and adoptive grandfather. Kuretsuchi handed the man the scroll Roshi gave her and then stepped off to the side. After a couple moments reading, Oinuki turned to the boy. Roshi says you've received regeneration from the Kyuubi. Yeah, and then he said he had to test it and hit me with a kunai. Annoying old fart. Naruto muttered. Oinuki and Kuretsuchi chuckled but asked for a demonstration themselves. Not wanting to get stabbed again, Naruto pulled a kunai out and cut his hand before holding it up for them to see. Like before, the wound had a small bit of steam coming out of it as it closed up before their eyes. Afterwards, Oinuki asked him to draw on a bit of Kyuubi's power to show them what changes he gained. He did so and both nodded at seeing the changes in person. Kuretsuchi also commented that it made him look wilder, like some feral animal. Alright then, I think that's all I needed to see. Naruto, it has been decided that Kuretsuchi will continue your training here in the village and that one a year you will spend a month with Roshi working on your control over Kyuubi. Oinuki explained to the blonde. The child nodded his understanding and was perfectly fine with it. Also, once you're 8 years old, you will be heading into the academy to learn with other children your age. Naruto nodded before the reality hit him and he gaped at the old man. But why? I mean, Ka-chan told me I'm at genin level in lots of stuff already. Why do I have to go to the academy like the other kids? Because she can't teach you everything. And because I will need her to start taking up the higher missions again. While it's true in some subjects you are far ahead of your generation, in others you are woefully behind them. And rather than hire private tutors to fix those areas, you will go to the academy and learn about them with the other kids. The Tsuchikage ordered. Naruto just slumped his shoulders but nodded his head. Kuretsuchi took this moment to speak up herself. Besides Naruto-kun, this will give you the opportunity to make some friends. And you'll get to show off to everybody. We know how you love attention. She commented with a grin. The boy seemed to brighten a bit at that. The next year was simple for Naruto, but still somewhat difficult. They decided that he'd spend April with Roshi, so Kuretsuchi spent the first 3 months pounding him into the ground with more physical training. Since they discovered the regeneration from Kyuubi, Kuretsuchi didn't have to bother holding back with his weights. As such, she packed them on as heavy as he could handle and had him exercise. Then once he got used to them to the point that he didn't feel them, he'd spend 2 days without them to get used to his body's true power before she'd throw on weights that were usually double what he just finished training with. By the time April came around he was glad to be leaving the village as she couldn't up his weights the moment he got used to them. Roshi was fine with having Naruto for another month and spent the time having him practice meditating as well as sparring with him to help his fighting style. He also had him once a week draw as much chakra from Kyuubi as he could and then spar with him. This gave Naruto more conditioning to the demonic chakra, let him get used to the enhancements the Biju's power gave him, and like a regular spar just helped him get better. Roshi never bothered him about his weights as he didn't care. After he was told that Kuretsuchi was being a devil with upping them all the time, the old man had a long laugh and promised him that he wouldn't push him about them or anything other than the training he was already doing with him. Naruto also came to see Roshi as an uncle of sorts, seeing as both were Jinchuriki and the old man had a calm, knowing air about him from his experience in the wars. When Naruto returned to Iwa, Kuretsuchi would once more up his weights and start training him more. She would also keep teaching him things ninja needed to know. His tactics weren't very good still, and he still couldn't beat Akatsuchi in shogi, but he was improving. Naruto also spent the time speaking with Kyuubi. For the most part the fox didn't care. It would laugh at his tortoise training and how his Ka-chan would punish him whenever he cursed in front of her. The fox also took any opportunity to mock the boy's intelligence and belittle him. But at other times the fox just seemed to be the wise teacher that had lost interest in everything else. Naruto learned that while the fox hated humanity, it never wanted to attack Konoha in the first place. It just wanted to be left alone when a certain man came and placed it under a genjutsu and forced it to attack. Naruto did his best to keep the fox happy, feeling that it would possibly lighten up on the taunting. Not a chance, but Kyuubi wouldn't say it. And that it might be easier to use its chakra if they were friendly with each other. Which was true, but Kyuubi didn't say it cause he just felt like insulting the boy anytime he could. Naruto's life became very routine. Wake up and eat breakfast. Then train his body with the basic warm-ups before Kuretsuchi would start training him in the katas of the style chosen for him, as well as giving him practice dodging by launching blunted kunai at him. A few times she would mix in real kunai or senbon to keep him on his toes and make sure he wouldn't just start talking hits because he could heal from them. After physical training would be lunch before she'd spend the afternoon training his mind in various things. Then dinner followed by some light workouts and finally sleep. The only differences were important festivals, birthdays, or the month he was with Roshi. Kitsuchi was still indifferent to the boy his daughter was raising. He didn't like his heritage and openly admitted that if Oanuki didn't order it he would have killed the boy. But other than that he put up with him and occasionally helped him with his training. Mainly the dodging training because it gave him an excuse to cause him pain without repercussion. The man understood he was being raised to take out his birthplace and found it poetic justice, but he still took any chance he got to hit the kid. Though he wouldn't do anything when Kuretsuchi was around because he could tell his daughter genuinely cared for the boy. Had they met under other circumstances, she would have wanted to kill him just like any other Iwa nin would. However, she raised him, and as such cared for him. Akatsuchi would stop by every once in a while to help out. The giant of a man was close to Naruto because of his childish nature and gentle persona. He would test his own strength against Naruto to see how the boy was coming along and found that the boy was actually closing the gap as time went on, physically gaining on the giant. Naruto was faster, that was a given, but what was surprising was that Akatsuchi was actually starting to put forth a little effort to outmuscle Naruto. Granted, he was still holding back quite a bit, never using more than 10 to 15% of his strength, but for a young child not even in the academy to match even that much of the giant was impressive. And then came Deidara. Naruto truly felt the elder blonde was an older brother to him. Naruto spent his time with his Nissan, training his speed and also his stealth. The two actually started a few small pranks in the village, usually involving absurd amounts of paint and flash bombs. And sadly, only about a tenth of the time were they even caught. Naruto's stealth skills shot through the roof while Kuretsuchi would shove him into the ground with training as punishment. Deidara would simply laugh and then use his claw birds to escape anytime they tried to punish him for the pranks. They were harmless and everybody knew it. It was just getting pranked by the annoying blondes of the village pissed many of the older generation off, as it was slightly reminding them of their embarrassment at the hands of the bastard Flash. It was even worse because it was the son of said bastard doing the pranks. Finally came the day Naruto would join the academy. He was wearing a black shirt with the Iwa symbol in red on his back along with some blue shorts and black shinobi sandals. On his wrists were weighted orange wristbands. While he wasn't going to be wearing the heavy arm and leg weights he did when training with Kuretsuchi, she wasn't going to let the boy go without weights at all. Concealed in his sandals were weights as well, having Naruto carried 200 pounds grand total. But he barely noticed and Kuretsuchi promised him she wouldn't up his weights again until he became a genin. As Naruto entered the building he saw that people had mixed reactions to him. Most of the adults were staring at him either with hatred or sadistic grins. Hate because of his father, grins because they knew what he was being raised for. And the children's reactions were mixed as well. Some with hate because their parents told them who he was, some of the girls with small grins because he looked kind of cute, but mostly with indifference as he was just another student like them. As Naruto looked around the class he was placed in he sighed. And then groaned when the teacher glared at him with obvious hate. It was going to be a long 4 years. Naruto sighed as he waited in class for his sensei. He had just graduated, along with most of the other kids his age. Yesterday and today they were being sorted into teams and then shipped off to be ninja of Iwa. He was wearing a dark orange shirt with a black long sleeve jacket over it. He also had on black pants and dark blue shinobi sandals. Tied to his right leg was a blood-red kunai holster and his Iwa headband was around his forehead with a cloth of the same color. On his wrists were special bracers made for him on his last birthday 2 months ago. They were black with red inlay and shaped like a fox's head, his hands coming out of the mouths of the items. They had a special feature to them as well which let them be used in battle for more than deflecting projectiles. Naruto's 4 years at the academy were extremely easy in all but 3 subjects: genjutsu, tactics and history. His genjutsu was average in that he could dispel any illusion up to B rank without difficulty but couldn't cast one for his life. He also didn't care for the past, saying he would burn his and the rest didn't matter. He barely paid attention to those lessons. And as for tactics, well, in small-scale or short-term plans he did about as good as the other students. But large-scale and long-term plans were beyond his reach. It didn't help that it was only last year when he finally started beating Akatsuchi in shogi, and even then he had an incredibly difficult time in doing so. He was more of an action person anyways. The teachers of the academy clearly hated him. However, none of them would dare to cripple his education because due to their fear of the Tsuchikage. So they tried to take out their hate during the physical sparing lessons by going all out when they were supposed to be holding back. Sadly, they discovered that Naruto was in top physical condition and beat all the Chunin that tried to hurt him into the ground before walking away muttering that they were a good workout. As such, they were extremely happy he wasn't the Rookie of the Year. If their hated enemy's son had shown them all up, then some of Iwa would have been extremely pissed. His horrible history and tactics grades dragging him into the number 2 spot. Not that he cared. To him the academy was just a way to teach him some basic jutsu and pair him with people that would hopefully be around his skill level. He learned the henge, transformation, and kawarimi, body replacement, jutsus with ease, but his high chakra and low control prevented him from doing a bunshin. Clone. Unlike Konoha, the academy in Iwa didn't determine a person's passing grade simply on 3 basic jutsu but on their compounded abilities in all subjects they were taught. As such, Naruto's inability to make basic clones aided in keeping him out of the top spot but couldn't hold him back. Alright class, it's time for you to shut up and get ready to go out and be ninja for our great village. A man said as he walked in. He was bald and had green eyes while wearing the standard Chunin outfit of Iwa. Think the same as Konoha's but with a tan vest and red clothes rather than green and blue. Now, as you know, you are going to be sorted into teams and placed under a Jonin who will train you and make you into great ninjas of Iwa. So listen up for your name. Team 1 is, he spoke. Naruto just stopped paying attention at that point, waiting for his name to be called. The man sorted the top rookie and top kunoichi with the bottom male and then sorted the rest due to their grades and personalities. Finally he stopped and set the clipboard down. Naruto noticed his name was never called. Oi, sensei, you didn't call me, you stupid fuck. You trying to piss of the Tsuchikage by holding me back? Naruto shouted at the man. This got half the class to laugh at the man and the other half to mutter that Naruto was a stuck-up ass. Listen brat, just cause Tsuchikage-sama puts up with your shit doesn't mean I have to. He replied. Naruto snorted and rolled his eyes. Yeah you do. 'Cause otherwise the old man will turn your ass to dust. Not that I couldn't kick it myself. Now what team am I on, bitch? Naruto shot back. During his 4 years he had developed a mean streak and an attitude to deal with the asses that hated him because of his father. Kyuubi would frequently comment he liked the new Naruto, claiming he was the cynical and sadistic little brother he never wanted. To which Naruto would respond, "Shut the hell up you demonic furry before I cut off our deal and just steal your chakra you ass." Which would only make Kyuubi break out laughing anyways. The two had actually grown close, somewhat, in the 4 years. They were definitely more than cordial and some would even say friends if they knew of the relationship in the first place. Sure, all of Iwa knew he had Kyuubi in him. Nobody knew he would frequently talk to the beast like one would an annoying older brother. Due to there not being enough graduates to make enough teams of 3, Yu and Hamamaru Hikari are being placed under a Jonin sensei and will be joined by another student that lost his last team on a mission. The Chunin told him in a dark voice filled with hate, even flashing his killing intent, getting the weaker kids to flinch. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders. Kyuubi and Oinuki blasted him with worse in their sleep. No, literally, Kyuubi actually had once blasted Naruto with its killer intent while sleeping, only to wake up to a very pissed-off blonde boy ranting how his stupid furred ass had caused him to lose his focus and nearly give Deidara a new mouth for his clay. The two of you are to go to Training Ground 36 in 2 hours to meet your teammate and sensei. The rest of you are to come back here in an hour for your senseis to pick you up. Now beat it, he shouted, causing a few students to rush out of the room. Naruto just scoffed at the man's tough act and casually got up and left the room, waiting outside the door for his teammate. So, I'm with you, huh, Naruto? Well, I could have done worse. She muttered as she walked out of the class and saw Naruto standing off to the side waiting for her. Hamamaru Hikari was something of an oddity to Naruto. After going through the ed lessons in the academy, he had actually paid some slight attention to the girls of the academy to see what they thought of him. Half seemed to hate him for his father, probably because either their parents hated him or because their parents didn't exist because of the Flash. The other half seemed to think he was cute, hot, or why, depending on whom you asked. But then there were 3 girls that didn't show any interest in him at all, neither hating nor fawning towards him. One of them was Hikari. Naruto had, during teamwork exercises, asked them what they thought of him. Getting exiled from his home for being hated and then having Iwa split down the middle with hate or sadistic glee towards him had made him slightly care as to what people thought of him. Or at least, knowing what people thought of him. He wasn't going to change what he was to get someone to like him. He just wanted to know what you thought so he would know whether to ignore you or not. Fangirls and haters he ignored or mocked on a frequent basis. Two of the girls he asked freely admitted that they were lesbians, and as such simply saw him as a future powerful addition to Iwa's ninja ranks and nothing more. Naruto respected that, and thought it was hot, and didn't bother them anymore. Hikari on the other hand, he didn't know what to make of her. When he asked what she thought of him her response was quick, dark and somewhat confusing to him. "I just don't care about you. I'm too busy showing up the East pigs in my family to bother with some blonde bastard that beats up the instructors with a smile. By the way, next time you do that could you kick Kashimaru-sensei in the nuts for me? I swear that bastard is leering at me and he's twice my age." She seemed to not care about him, be impressed with him, and friendly with him enough to ask him for a favor. All at the same time, and to Naruto's preteen mind, it was a little too much for him to understand. As such, the girl was an oddity that he wanted to try and figure out without actually trying. A walking contradiction if there was one, but he ignored such trifles like logic in favor of doing whatever the hell he wanted. "Yeah, same here. So, you want to get some lunch before we go to the grounds and meet our sensei and third teammate?" Naruto offered. She just shrugged her shoulders and then followed him as they left the academy. As they walked, Naruto snuck a glance at the girl to see if she made any changes to her wardrobe since graduating, which she hadn't apparently. Hikari had dark purple hair that went down to about the middle of her neck, save for a small white lock that went from the center of her forehead and curved around her left eye. Around her forehead was her Iwa headband, tied with white cloth. She wore a black shirt with cuts at the shoulders, revealing some skin, while the sleeves of her outfit were large and went down to her fingertips, allowing her to hide her hands in them as she wished. She also had on a black short skirt with some red spandex shorts on underneath them. Completing her look were the white shin guards and black shinobi sandals as well as the red equipment pouch at her hip. "So, any preference or would you eat anything right now?" "Shrimp since you're offering," she replied. The two headed to the local seafood restaurant that had small lines and good food. They ordered and spent their time simply talking about who they suspected to be their sensei or what happened to their teammate since he lost his team on his last mission. The two walked into the training grounds and looked around to see what it was like. The area was mainly bare, a couple trees here or there. A few large boulders and a small stream to complete the area. It really didn't have much to set it apart. The two walked towards the center of the area where they found a teen sitting on the largest boulder and staring at the sky. As they got near he lowered his head and looked at them before nodding his head as a greeting before going back to staring at the sky. Naruto and Hikari waited for a moment before Naruto spoke up. "You mind coming down here so we can actually introduce ourselves, or do I have to shatter this rock you find so comfortable?" The boy looked at him again, specifically his eyes, to see if he was serious, which after a couple seconds deduced he was. The boy stood up and then jumped down, landing in front of them as if a 12-foot drop was nothing. Which to most ninja it wasn't, but that's beside the point. The boy had short, pure black hair that was spiked up along with gray eyes. There was a small scar running above his right eye that curved around it slightly. For clothes he wore a gray short-sleeve muscle shirt with a black cargo vest over it worn open. He also had black cargo pants and black boots rather than the common sandals that ninja found so popular. His hands were in fingerless black gloves and he didn't have an equipment pouch anywhere on him from what they could see. Finally, after a few seconds of silence where they seemed to be sizing each other up, he spoke, his voice a monotone that hid any thoughts or emotions he might have had towards them. "My name is Kurai. I've been a genin for 3 years and am 15 years old. My skills are mainly taijutsu with my weapon Soul Reaver. I am a fire element and do not use any of the standard ninja tools as they are useless to me." Naruto and Hikari stared at him for a moment as they weren't expecting so much info. They were expecting a name, maybe age, but not a small breakdown of his skills as well. They were also curious now about this weapon, seeing as he didn't carry anything on him. Naruto just shrugged and was about to speak when they heard a small noise behind them and they looked to see their sensei walking up. Oh good, you're all here. Then we can get started. For his part Naruto just stood gaping and pointing at the Jonin. No fucking way. You're our sensei? I call bullshit on Oji-sama. He was then quickly kicked into the boulder Kurai had been sitting on. What have I told you about cursing in front of me, Naruto-kun? Oi, I'm legally an adult now so I can do whatever the fuck I want, Ka-chan. Naruto shouted as he pulled himself out of the rock and glared at the woman who was scowling at him. Kurai looked between the two before seemingly accepting it and waiting for Kuritsuchi to tell them to do something while Hikari seemed confused. Wait a minute, Ka-chan? You're his mother? What the hell? I thought Jonin couldn't take teams with family members on them. She shouted. Naruto ignored the girl, instead preferring to glare at their sensei while the woman sighed and looked over to Hikari. Hamamaru Hikari, right? She asked, getting a nod in confirmation. Normally that's the case. However, there are two things different about this. One is that he's not really my son, he's technically adopted into my family and I just happened to take care of and raise the idiot. And two is that this team is special. Tsuchikage-sama has plans for these two and wanted me to watch over them since he knows I can get them to where he wants them. She explained, so I'm just some filler getting dragged along for the ride, huh? Hikari shouted. Kuritsuchi smiled but shook her head. If you want to look at it like that then go ahead, but that's not true. I personally chose you out of the other graduates because I think your skills and clan techniques can and will mesh nicely with these two better than anybody else. The girl still seemed unsure, but Kuritsuchi could tell she is willing to go along with it for the moment, so she turned back to Naruto. And you, while we're with the team or on a mission, it's sensei. Not Ka-chan, got it? She asked, lacing her words with killing intent. Now unlike the Chunin failure of a teacher, she could actually threaten him, so he quickly nodded his understanding and walked back up to the others while dropping his glare. Alright then, for the two of you that don't know me, my name is Kuritsuchi. I'm the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage, this brat's adoptive mother and your new sensei. I enjoy spending time with my family, cooking and a certain other Jonin. She paused at this, lacing a death-filled glare at Naruto, daring him to make a comment about it. Wisely, he got the message and stayed quiet. I don't like being looked down on or being forced to do things I don't want to do. My goal is simple. To one day have some kids of my own as well as help you three achieve your goals. Now you, she said as she pointed to Hikari. My name is Hamamaru Hikari and I'm the heiress to the Hamamaru clan. I like seafood, flowers and cats. I hate most of my family and people who look down on kunoichis. East bastards. She muttered before shaking her head and continuing. My dream is to take over my clan and bring us to dominance in Iwa as their top clan. I also want to change a few of the customs that just piss me off despite the clan elders. Hikari concluded with a slight grin. Kuritsuchi smirked and then turned to Kurai. My name is Kurai, no family name that I know of. I like Iwa and dislike any threat to it. My goal is to simply become a powerful ninja in Iwa's ranks so that I can help us rise to the top of the 5 great villages. He spoke quickly, politely, and in a never-changing monotone that made Naruto wonder if the kid wasn't some statue Akatsuchi brought to life. After waiting a moment and seeing Kuritsuchi looking at him, Naruto started. The name's Namikaze Naruto, Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko and son of Iwa's greatest enemy. I like ramen, fighting and spending time with my niece Sandidera. I don't like Konoha and I hate people who judge or hate others for things out of their control. My dream is to raise Konoha to the ground, kill a certain man for Kyuubi, and then to become the greatest ninja in Iwa's history. Naruto spoke with confidence. Kurai and Hikari could tell that he wouldn't rest until he truly completed those goals for himself. They were slightly curious as to who this man Kyuubi wanted dead was, but otherwise accepted his introduction without comment. Kuritsuchi nodded and then cleared her throat to make sure attention was on her. Good, now that we've gotten that taken care of we can start. First off, I want to have some training and spars with the 3 of you to fully get where you all are and what I can do to further you all along. And yes, Naruto-kun, despite the fact I already know your skills, you still have to do them to show your teammates. It'll make you a more effective unit if you know what each other can do. She added on as Naruto opened his mouth to say she knew his already. Seeing that he stayed silent and had an understanding look on his face, the new sensei smirked. It was time to get to work. Kuritsuchi was honestly enjoying herself as a sensei. She got to spend time within the village more often, take care of easy missions that might as well be paid vacations from her normal rank work, and mold the next generation to her liking. While Naruto would still throw up his attitude occasionally and Kurai seemed to lack one entirely, Hikari was a nice balance to the two and things were kept within reasonable comfort and enjoyment. It also helped that she shared Hikari's sentiment of proving that kunoichi are just as, if not better, than their male counterparts. The team was walking back into the village after a simple C-rank escort mission to Kaminari no Kuni. Unlike Konoha, Iwe had the students in their last year at the academy perform D-rank missions. This was to get them used to the idea of working with others on missions. They didn't value teamwork as much as the treehuggers did, but they understood that it was either work together or you all fail. As such, new genin only really performed D ranks for a couple weeks after becoming ninja or as punishments from their sensei. It was highly embarrassing for a team of more than 3 months to be walking dogs or cleaning the streets. The escort mission they had was to guard a merchant on his way to Kumo and then guard him and his caravan on the way back. Since Kumo and Iwe had a shaky alliance, they could do the mission in their lands without incident. Her students also got to see what another hidden village looked like, having been to Kumo herself with her grandfather the Tsuchikage. For the most part her students didn't seem to care, though they were surprised to see that unlike the rest of the world, most of Kumo was dark-skinned and there were fewer with the light complexion that they thought was normal. She did have a slight scare though when on the first night, Naruto told her that Kyuubi felt other demonic entities nearby. So she was forced to explain that Kumo had 2 Jinchuriki of their own, the Nibi and Hachibi, and that they were the ones Kyuubi had sensed. She had ordered him to not seek them out and should he be confronted he was to be polite and refuse to speak and get her as quickly as possible. Yes, Iwe and Kumo were allies. But under the Sandame Reikage, Kumo had orchestrated many kidnappings of ninja with Kekkei Genkei and even tried a couple on the younger Jinchuriki. They didn't know, and weren't willing to risk, if the new Yondaime did the same. Kuritsuchi banished the thoughts from her head though as she and her team left the man at his shop to go report a mission success. It was only a month since she had been a sensei and her team had grown stronger. Kurai had shown his skill and experience right away and currently she was the only one that could honestly match and beat him. Naruto was close and Hikari could give him a good run for his money but Kurai was still stronger than the two. Naruto though was the fastest, outrunning even her when they did races for speed training. Kurai and Hikari were both quite fast and could keep up with her if they exhausted themselves but she was still faster and made it difficult for them. But stealth was where Hikari shined. Anytime the boys lost sight of her they'd find her with a blade to their neck. They couldn't find her unless she wanted to be found and Kuritsuchi actually had to try to find the girl as well. And as for jutsu, she couldn't help 2 of her students and could only help her third. Kurai, as he had told them, was a fire element. However, all his jutsu involve his weapon and he didn't need any help in that department anyways. Naruto turned out to be a wind affinity so she couldn't do much more than point him to Oinuki, who with his Kekkei Toto was a fire, earth and wind affinity. Hikari though turned out to be an earth affinity, which she informed them was common in her family as most were earth or water affinities. Though usually it was the men in the family with earth while the women had water. Still with one of her students sharing her affinity and needing help with it, Kuritsuchi did her best to train Hikari in the subtleties of Doden Jutsu. Walking into the Tsuchikage's office she smiled at her grandfather and gave a nod to Akatsuchi who was standing behind him like usual. While Akatsuchi was smart, he was slightly slower and more childish than a man in his late 20s, early 30s should be. As such, the Tsuchikage gave him an easy job, to be his personal guard. It had the added effect of an intimidation factor as the young man towered over just about everyone alive. Combine that with the fact that Oinuki himself was feared for his Jinten techniques and any Naniwa ninja, and some of the more cowardly members of their own forces, were hard-pressed to keep their cool and confidence. Team 13 back from our C-rank Tsuchikage-sama, she announced as they stopped and she handed the old man the mission scroll. Good, Oinuki stated as he took the scroll and after making sure it had the client's signature to verify completion, looked over the students. So how did you 3 enjoy Kumo? The place sucks ass, Tsuchikage Oji-sama. Iwe is 10 times better. Naruto remarked casually. Kuritsuchi rolled her eyes at the boy's blunt attitude but said nothing since she was of the same opinion. Kurai was silent and made no motion towards feeling anything towards their ally while Hikari just grinned. They had some good calamari though. Gotta admit that much. Much like how Naruto, to Kuritsuchi's horror and disgust at times, was addicted to ramen, Hikari couldn't get enough of seafood. She'd have some kind of fish, squid, crab or ocean food every single chance she got. It wasn't much of a problem since she made sure to include other foods in her meal plan and get enough of everything for a balanced meal. But seafood still made up a good half or so of all her diet. I'll get some more next time we visit. That's fine, I'm quite partial to their sake myself. Oinuki commented. Did anything I should know about happen on the mission or was it the standard fare? He asked as he turned his attention to his granddaughter. Naruto told me Kyuubi sensed Kumo's Jinchuriki, so I had to warn him to be cautious and find me should he be alone and confronted by them, but otherwise nothing. Oinuki looked at Naruto, who just shrugged his shoulders with an indifferent look on his face. That's fine, you're all dismissed then. Come back for another mission in a couple days. The three kids gave a short bow and then left while Kuritsuchi simply had a quick word with Akatsuchi before leaving herself. As she exited the building she found her students waiting for her. Okay you three, go home and rest up or whatever. Just meet at the training grounds tomorrow morning at 9. They nodded as she then vanished in a shunshin, body flicker, for whatever she was going to do. Kurai said his goodbyes and left for his apartment. It always seemed to go that way. After training or missions, Kurai would simply go off to be on his own. He was always polite and kind, but his monotone voice and constant blank face made it seem like he just didn't care for anything. More than once Naruto had joked that he was just a moving statue and tried to agitate him and provoke an emotional response just to fail every time. The boy had no feelings or worries it seemed. Well, I'm off for some ramen before I go home, Naruto said as he started walking off. Not surprisingly Hikari shrugged her shoulders and just started to walk with him. Usually after Kurai would split for his own devices, Hikari or Naruto would mention going to get something to eat and the other would just go with out of boredom. Hikari spent as much time as she could get away with as far from her clan compound as possible since she hated a good 90% of the members, while Naruto just didn't really care and figured spending time with a teammate was better than wandering the village alone. The two walked in a comfortable silence until they came up to a small eatery. The owner was a man that used to hate Naruto, since his brother had been a ninja killed by the Flash. But since the boy had become a regular that literally filled his wallet every visit, he'd tolerate the boy. And over the years he stopped hating him for his father's actions. Hey Naruto, back from your mission huh? You having the usual? He called out as he and Hikari sat down at a booth. The man came over to talk for a moment as the shop was having a slow day. He was bald and had multiple wrinkles on his face, but they only seemed to draw attention to his contrasting bright green eyes. He wore a simple brown kimono top and black pants. Yep, easy deal too. Thanks Kenji. And what about you Hikari? The girl stopped in with Naruto a lot over the past month, so he had gotten to know the Hamamaru heiress a little better as well. Shrimp like always? He joked, knowing she likely would get that very meal. You know it. Thanks, she replied with a simple grin. He just chuckled and walked back to the kitchen to get started on their orders. As he left, Naruto and Hikari just turned to each other. So anything new with the asses back home? Naruto asked. He called her family a bunch of asses for two reasons. One was she did so she obviously didn't care. And the other was because they were staunch, Namikaze haters, and wanted to stick a knife between his eyes every time they looked at him. The usual. I suck compared to my male cousins. I should kill you on one of our missions and make it look like an accident, and I should learn how to actually fight. Nothing new from them, she replied. Naruto just scoffed. Yeah right, if you need to learn how to fight then I need to learn how to run. You kick ass as it is and they're just pissed cause you won't kill me. They really hate that we're friends don't they? That's half the reason I keep hanging out with you Naruto. They hate me, I hate them, and it's fun as hell to do exactly what pisses them off. Hikari responded cheekily. Naruto just chuckled. She had told him after following him for food the third time that besides actually getting food cause she was hungry, she also hung out with him more than needed because it pissed her clan off that their heiress was close to the Flash's bastard son. They hated the Flash because in the battle where he slaughtered over 200 men single-handedly, they lost over 20 members. And now their heiress was on the same team as him and she refused to kill him in his sleep. Rather she was friends with him. It was the ultimate insult to them and Hikari knew it. And when she told Naruto, they shared a good laugh at their frustration. Anything up with Sensei or Tsuchikage-sama? Not with Oji-sama that I know of. But I'm pretty sure Ka-chan is gonna be looking for excuses to stay in the village soon. I mean, Dai-ni-san should be getting back soon from his mission if not already. During one of their after-mission, training meals, Naruto had told Hikari of how Kuretsuchi seemed to be seeing Deidara in secret. In fact, it was so secret that even Onuki didn't know. The only reason Naruto did was because he had accidentally come across them making out on 3 different occasions over the course of 2 years before he started the academy, and they always threatened him to keep silent about it. At first he didn't get it, but after the school taught Ed, it all fell into place for him. He was just happy he hadn't actually come across them in the act. He didn't think his mind would be able to take seeing his mother figure and brother figure going at it. Their thoughts and conversation were put on hold as their meals came out. Like he normally did, Naruto had 5 bowls placed in front of him of various flavors and was told the other 10 would be coming out soon. Hikari only had a single bowl of shrimp ramen and started eating at a slow pace as Naruto practically inhaled his food with a smile. Unknown to them, watching from the other side of the street was Kuretsuchi and Deidara. "See Kuro-chan? You didn't believe me when I said the Gaki has a girlfriend." Deidara taunted with a grin. Kuretsuchi scoffed as they watched. "Please, she hasn't shown any interest in him and he doesn't care either. She's just using him to get away from her clan duties and he just likes the company. Nothing romantic at all," she argued back. They hadn't shown any romantic interest in each other at all during their team meetings, so she was hard-pressed to believe there was any, like Deidara argued. There hadn't even been any hintings of a blush when they put the other in compromising situations during spars and training. The two didn't have any feelings for each other as far as she could tell. "So you say, but I can just tell those two are gonna start making out one of these days. You just can't see it like I can." Kuretsuchi deadpanned at him as he had a slight grin. "And what makes you so damn sure that I'm wrong and you're right?" "Well, considering you didn't even notice I was flirting with you until we got drunk at that one party 4 years ago and I kissed you, I'd say you're clueless about this sort of thing, Just trust me, will ya? They'll be getting together soon or I'll proclaim I'm wrong about art being an explosion to all of Iwa. No matter how wrong that opinion is, He then shook his head and started walking away. "But that's for another time, Now come on, I thought you wanted to see that new Princess Gale movie." Deidara had to make sure he hadn't fallen asleep and gone to dreamland as he suddenly found himself in front of the theater with Kuretsuchi holding onto his arm. "Well, come on then, you're paying." "Of course I am, Alright you 3, we're going to get another mission today rather than training, so let's all get going." It had been a week and a half since they returned from Kumo and the team had met at the training grounds like they normally did every morning. It was the same training ground they had met in since becoming a team and the act had become routine to them. Kurai would usually be first, sitting on the large rock at the middle of the grounds, staring at the sky as he waited for the others. Then would usually be Hikari, coming in a few minutes after he did, and she'd just sit down and wait with her eyes closed. And finally Naruto and Kuretsuchi would show up at the same time since they lived together. Then would come training or a mission, depending on the day. Today was a mission apparently. A few minutes later and the team was standing in front of the Tsuchikage as he went over some paperwork. He looked up as they entered and gave a grin. "Here for another mission already? I figured you'd wait the rest of the week first. These 3 work well together and I don't really have much I need to truly teach them. All they really need is experience and to strengthen their basics, and they'll be ready for Chunin in no time at all. So, got anything for us?" she explained with a smirk. While the genin made no indication to care for her words, Hikari and Naruto were inwardly smiling at how she felt they were pretty much ready for Chunin so quickly. Kurai was emotionless and couldn't care less one way or the other, like usual. His teammates still hadn't found out why he was like that. "Alright, take this one. There's a group of bandits harassing people near our border with AIM. Kill them or chase them into AIM's territory so we don't have to worry about them. Do not cross into AIM's territory yourself. Start searching for them by the town of Kisai, that's where we received the last complaints about them." Onuki gave out the details as he pulled out a scroll with the official mission specifics written on it and tossed it to Kuretsuchi. She gave it a quick glance and noticed it was pretty much what Onuki had just told them, only worded differently. She nodded and then turned her attention back to her students. Okay, you three, gather what's needed and be at the south gate in an hour. They all nodded and left to get their supplies, and Kuretsuchi left in a shunshin. Owanuki turned back to his paperwork and read over a few things and signed what was needed before a certain form caught his eye. Oh, the leader of Otogakure is requesting a meeting? Let's see how this goes. Another mission, Hikari-sama? Hikari had headed back to her clan compound, which was conveniently on the edge of Iwa near the south gate, to get her supplies. She paused as the voice called out to her and turned around to see the only person in her clan she hated more than her own father. What the hell do you want, Yamai? Yamai was a young boy a year younger than her that was the son of the clan head's brother. He had black hair that was slicked back and cut off just above his neck. He had dark black eyes and wore a red kimono top with black trim as well as black hakama with red tribal designs running down the sides. On his feet were the basic shinobi sandals colored black, while around his left wrist was a small black gauntlet bearing the Hamamaru clan crest. A red rose with a silver stem. Just curious as to what our heiress is going to be doing, Hikari-sama. His voice was dripping with sarcasm and Hikari knew it. In fact, Yamai didn't even bother trying to hide it. You know, Daisuke-sama is disappointed in you. I don't give a shit if Tu-san were to come here himself and tell me that. You're just waiting for your chance to take me out so you can be the heir, and since you can't do it in a straight-up fight, you're hoping I'll die on a mission. Seeing him grit his teeth brought a smirk to Hikari's face. Oh, did I touch a sore spot, weakling? Listen here, by our clan's traditions I should be heir. Not a weak little girl like you. He shouted. The Hamamaru clan was extremely old-fashioned in that they still treated women like they were inferior, and as such the clan head was supposed to have a male heir. However, his wife had produced Hikari before dying from the childbirth. Normally this would get them to just have the head have another wife and hopefully get them to produce a male. But another tradition of theirs was that they can only marry once, and none of them would break this rule. As such, when the head's brother managed to have a male child, he was to become the heir if he proved stronger than Hikari. Yamai had been training his entire life to take over the clan, as most felt the clan couldn't be led by a weak woman. However, Hikari had defeated her cousin in every contest they tried to put her in. She was smarter, faster, stronger, and had a better mastery over their clan techniques than he did, and she frequently rubbed his face in it since he refused to admit he was weaker than a girl. If I'm weak, then what are you? In case you still haven't learned it yet, you haven't beaten me. Ever. In fact, you haven't even come close. She taunted, getting him to flush red in anger. Now go away, Yamai, I have a mission to prepare for. She said as she turned and started walking away calmly, having nothing more to say to her weaker cousin. The boy was seething at her common dismissal and was about to throw himself at her to kill her, but a sudden spike of killing intent froze him where he stood. What's going on here? Both turned to see a man in a formal black kimono with the Hamamaru crest on the right side of his chest walking up. He had black hair that was thinning slightly and a scar that went across his forehead, a memento from a Konoha ninja he fought in the war. He turned his steel gray eyes on Yamai before locking them with Hikari's own gray eyes. I have a mission to prepare for. When Yamai came and started spouting shit like usual. When I dismissed him to gather my supplies, you came up to San. Hikari explained calmly. Her father made no motion to either anger or shock at her blunt description of Yamai's conversation with her. The two hated each other, and to be honest, Yamai pretty much talked like that all the time, and even the more supportive clan members have said he needs to learn to hold back the attitude if he wants to be a better clan head. If she has a mission, then you cannot bother her, Yamai. Leave us, he ordered. The boy glared at her before spitting out a, "Hi, Daisuke-sama," and walking off. Hikari smirked as he left before turning back to her father. So what do you need? Telling me when his next challenge is going to be or how much better a male heir would be. She said as her smirk turned into a scowl. Daisuke again made no motion towards giving away his thoughts at his daughter's words. In reality, Daisuke loved his daughter dearly. However, by clan tradition and his own beliefs, a woman was not meant to lead, so he supported all the motions to remove her from heir status. So long as they wouldn't involve killing her. He kept trying to break her spirit or find some way to make her fail a challenge, as by clan law, she couldn't be removed from her title of heiress without failing to challenge her by doing harm to the clan's reputation. Some had tried to argue her friendship with the Namikaze brat was harming their reputation, but Hikari herself had countered that being friendly with teammates was not harming any reputation, and that by allying herself on a personal level with the Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko, she was assuring them that the boy would never have any reason to hate the Hamamaru clan. Thus she proved being friends with Naruto was not only helpful, but that if they tried to make a fuss about it, then they would be harming the clan's representative and not her. Another victory for her and another failure in the push her out of heiress status movement. I'm merely curious about your mission, Hikari. I do care for you, daughter. Hikari scoffed. Barely, she muttered before shaking her head. We're heading out to take care of a bandit problem near Kisai. That's all. There shouldn't be any trouble at all, so don't worry. I'll be back for the clan to hate in a few days. So if that's all, she trailed as he nodded his head. She turned and left back for her room as Daisuke merely sighed and walked back to his office. His conflicting thoughts draining him. On one hand, Hikari was perfect. A skilled ninja, an intelligent and outgoing woman, and a perfect model for the next clan head. But on the other, tradition dictates that she should not take over should her cousin prove superior in a single matter. It frustrated him to no end that the clan's needs and wants were costing him a friendly and loving relationship with his daughter. But the needs of the many come before the needs of one. And that frustrated him to no end. Alright, everyone ready to go? Kuritsuchi asked as Hikari showed up at the gate. Despite living so close, she was the last to arrive. Kurai used nothing more than his weapon, which they had learned he kept hidden through a special jutsu until needed, so he was the first to arrive, merely sealing a few bentos of food into a scroll and placing that in a pocket before waiting at the gate. Naruto had gotten his stuff together and then waited for Kuritsuchi before they just headed to the gate together and waited. Hikari was last and they knew it was likely some clan issues, the sour look on her face practically assured it. When they all nodded, Kuritsuchi turned around and led them out. Alright then, let's go kill some bandits. Omake, the first taste. Okay Gaki, seeing as I have to watch you while Kuro-chan goes and does that quick mission with Oinuki-sama, we're going out to eat. Cause we both know I can't cook Deidara said as he led a young 4-year-old Naruto through Iwa's streets. The boy had on a simple black t-shirt and tan shorts as Deidara was in casual clothes, a long-sleeved tan shirt with Iwa's symbol in the back in black along with black pants. Naruto nodded with a grimace at the memory of the last time Deidara tried to make something harder than a sandwich. He had puked it right back up in under a minute. So where we going, Ni-san? The boy asked with a bright smile on his face. Deidara suppressed the urge to smack the boy for calling him Ni-san when he didn't like the kid that much. But then he'd complain to Kuritsuchi and she'd go all protective mom on him even though the boy wasn't hers at all. She really fell into the mother role quickly, he noticed. He shook his head clear of those thoughts as he turned his attention back to Naruto. We're heading to a little ramen shop I stop by occasionally after a mission. The food's good, and it's cheap too. So come on. Deidara led him to a small little shop and sat down at a table as Naruto took the seat across from him, his legs dangling over the edge as he was still short. A few minutes later and a man walked up to them. What can I get you? He asked as his eyes noticed Naruto. Deidara instantly saw the hatred in the man's eyes and cleared his throat to get his attention back on him. Naruto didn't notice the dark look as he turned his attention back to Deidara before the boy looked at him. 2 bowls of miso to start with. If we want more we'll order it afterwards. He nodded and turned to leave when Deidara grabbed his hand and gave him a hard look before letting go. The man walked off and read the note the older blonde had slipped into his hand with a shudder. Try anything on the boy and I'll blow you in this shop to bits before Tsuchikage-sama brings you back just to dust you himself. Needless to say, the man would stick with just glaring at the young Naruto from now on. Within 10 minutes their orders were brought out and Deidara started eating as Naruto seemed to stir it around a bit with his chopsticks before tentatively bringing a small bit to his mouth to try. He never had this ramen stuff before. His Ka-chan would tell him he needed to eat a healthy palette of foods to make sure he got the nutrients he needed to grow strong. Whatever that meant, his 4-year-old mind only understood that she made good meals so he'd be big and strong like his aka Ni-chan. Since he had never had ramen before, it likely wasn't on that good food list his Ka-chan talked about. But she wasn't here and his Ni-san would sometimes slip him candy, which he knew was bad, but it tasted great. Maybe this ramen stuff was the same way? Naruto placed a few noodles in his mouth and mulled the taste over for a bit before stopping and staring at the bowl with wide blank eyes. Deidara froze for a minute thinking his warning wasn't enough and the man had poisoned Naruto's bowl when suddenly the boy started devouring the ramen like it was his first meal in years. The older blonde sighed but had a grin on his face as he watched the boy pretty much inhale the noodles. He was about halfway finished with his bowl when suddenly Naruto put his down. "More please," he cried out. Deidara stared at him for a moment but then shrugged and waved the man over and asked him to bring out 2 more bowls. He was planning on having a second himself. A few minutes later and the bowls were set on the table and Naruto started digging into one of them as Deidara was still finishing his first. Just as he finished his first bowl he reached to take the other bowl of ramen he had asked for when Naruto snatched it and started devouring it himself. Deidara looked at him with disbelief on his face as he saw the 2 bowls Naruto had already devoured and then back to the third the 4-year-old was shoving down. "That was mine, he muttered but Naruto didn't hear him. A few seconds later Naruto set the bowl down and let out a small burp. "This stuff is really good, Ni-san. Can I have some more?" The Iwa nin stared at him blankly before sighing. "Sure Gaki, have as much as you want. Oi, we're gonna need more over here," he called out to the cook. He had no idea what he just unleashed. When Kuritsuchi got back that night she saw Naruto sitting on the living room floor playing with a few toys with Deidara sitting on the couch with a torrent of tears running down his face as he stared at a small leather wallet in front of him. "So how were things?" Naruto perked up upon hearing her voice and ran over and hugged her. "It was great, Ka-chan. Dai Ni-san took me to get some ramen." Kuritsuchi suppressed the urge to laugh since it was known Deidara didn't like being called that before what Naruto said dawned on her. "Wait, ramen?" she asked as she pulled back slightly and looked at the boy. He nodded with a huge grin on his face before turning to Deidara. "What the hell? I had leftovers in the fridge you could have had. I'm trying to give him a healthy diet, Deidara. I don't want you taking him out for junk food like that." "Don't worry, I'll never take the Gaki out for ramen again." He then looked up and opened the wallet showing it was empty. The little Gaki ate an entire B-rank paycheck away. "Never again. If he wants the shit he's paying for his own. The elder blonde shouted. Naruto pouted at how Deidara was promising to never take him out for ramen again as Kuritsuchi started laughing at his misfortune. "Kill them all," a man shouted. There was a loud chorus of "Hi" before the screams were heard. The village was burning brightly from fire even as rain fell from the sky. The man turned and looked back at a little boy of around 4 or 5 clutching his weapon close to his chest and staring fearfully at the village where the others were slaughtering the populace. "What are you doing, boy? I ordered you to kill them. But killing is wrong," he shouted with tears in his eyes. The man froze for a moment at the boy's words before striking the boy in the face. The child was sent flying to the ground. Surprisingly he still had held his weapon. "I don't want to hurt anybody." "You foolish boy," the man yelled as he struck him again. "You have been given the greatest of honors. You will one day be our beacon that will lead us to paradise. I was tasked with ensuring that you grow into what we need and here you are going against our very beliefs." He continued striking the child as he shouted at him. "Now you will get up and you will kill or trust me. Jashin-sama won't be able to save you from my wrath." The last thing the boy saw was a black spike coming down towards his chest before there was a loud scream and everything went black. "So how long will it take to get to the town?" Naruto asked as the group was running at a comfortable speed through the mountainous terrain of Tsuchi no Kuni. Kuritsuchi gave the team a glance out of the corner of her eye and was happy to see that Naruto wasn't the only one keeping up with her with ease. Hikari and Kurai barely looked like the trip was bothering them. They had been keeping their current pace since leaving Iwa and not once had they stopped for a break. "That was an hour ago. Well, if we keep the pace we're going at then Kisai should be coming up in about another hour or so," she answered before turning her attention back on the path they were following. Naruto nodded and then gave a slight grin. Bandit extermination missions were his favorite missions because they let him test his fighting skills. Plus sometimes bandits grouped together under a missing nin to make them a bigger threat. Thus, Naruto would likely get an even bigger challenge. He merely kept quiet with his small grin, hoping that these bandits would provide a good fight. Meanwhile Hikari was keeping her face blank as she focused on the task ahead of them. She was still a little pissed at the small interaction with her cousin from before they left, but she knew to keep personal problems out of mind during missions. Kurai was much the same way, with an emotionless look as they headed to the village. After they arrived there, their plan would be to get info from the civilians about the bandits and possibly a location before a search for the group and then an eventual battle. Kurai would make sure that the bandits wouldn't escape. He had been trained in Iwit to never let a target escape. The remainder of the trip had been silent. Not uncomfortable silence, but rather just understanding. Naruto had voiced the only relevant question at the time, and after getting the answer they continued on without a word. They couldn't plan out a battle strategy without information, and neither could they rush on ahead without exhausting themselves. It was a simple understanding, and nobody really had anything worth talking about anyways, so they wouldn't try to force conversation. That just annoyed them. Okay, you know the drill. Find out what you can and meet back here in 2 hours. Kuritsuchi ordered before they split up after arriving in town. They were going to ask the villagers about any and all info about the bandits they could get while their sensei would speak with the mayor, who had requested the mission, and speak with him about it. Naruto wandered around town with his hands in his pockets as he tried to think of a good place to ask people about their problem. Eventually he just walked up to a street merchant that was selling some fruits. Hey there. The man looked up to see the young shinobi in black and wondered what he wanted before noticing the headband. Oh, and ninja. You must be here about them bandits. Naruto grinned and nodded his head. Oh good, you know about them. I'm looking to get some info before I regroup with my team and we take him out. Got anything you can tell me? He asked as he grabbed an apple and tossed the man a couple ryo for it. Sure, they've been messin' with us for about a week or so. There's at least 10 of them, and word is they got some missing nin to be leading him. The man replied. Naruto nodded his head with a thoughtful look as he took a bite out of the apple. Anything else I should know? Last I think they messed with me brother's shipment of food that was supposed to come in from the south. That was 2 days ago. They might still be around there. Naruto grinned and tossed the man another ryo. Thanks. The blonde then continued on and asked around. Most said the same, although the numbers seemed to vary from 10 to 30, but that only made him grin more. More enemies meant a better fight. A better fight was exactly what he wanted. Besides, if things got out of hand he'd just use Kyuubi and rip through everything before he'd head back to Iwa with his team. I'm not your goddamn cheat code to life, boy. The fox grumbled in his head at that last thought. Naruto merely put his body on autopilot as he focused on talking with the fox. Well, why not Kyuubi? I was under the impression you liked it when I used your power to kill things. I do, when it's actually a challenge. Bandits are people you could kill when you were 10. They would only have been a challenge when you first contacted me. Well, don't you also like when there's an overwhelming number to slaughter? But you have to split the work with that team of yours. You can't just let me loose to do some damage, so don't bother using me. I find it insulting. Whatever. Still though, you gonna watch the battle. What do you think? I love watching you kill things. Try and make it interesting, kid. Kyuubi replied with what Naruto could obviously tell was amusement in its voice. The blonde just smirked as he pulled his focus back to his surroundings and took another bite of his apple. He'd enjoy this mission, that was for sure. I see. Alright then, we'll start our search from the southern edge of town and spread out in a southeast fashion. Use your radios if you find them. Remember, do not engage until the entire team arrives unless you must. Move out, Kuritsuchi ordered. The group had come together and shared what they learned, which was pretty much the same thing, only that the supposed missing nin was apparently from Suna. Other than that though, they all found out the same thing. Somewhere between 10 to 30 enemies and the bandits had been harassing the area for a couple weeks. The group quickly checked to make sure their radios were working and were set to the correct signal before heading out. Now let's see, I'm the best at tracking things on our team, so I'll likely find them first. Hikari thought as she leapt up to a tree and looked around. From her high vantage point she could also see her teammates and sensei as they spread out. A small grin came to her face as she thought about the fun she's had with them, especially with Naruto. She quickly shook her head to get her focus back on the mission before jumping down to keep up her search. As soon as she landed she dashed forward and kept her eyes peeled for any signs of activity. The mission would be simple and over quickly. No signs of life outside the local animal population. Have the targets already moved on? Or did they gain notice of us and are waiting in ambush? Too many variables to make a proper decision at this time. I must simply continue my search. Kurai thought as he stood up from kneeling on the ground to inspect what he thought could have been a clue but turned out to be a simple bear print. As he stood he heard a twig snap and spun to face the source only to see a small raccoon running away from his sudden action. He sighed but straightened himself before looking around and continuing his search. Boring, Naruto whined as he kept looking around. He had very little skill in finding things without something pointing him exactly where to go, like a map and compass. A guide wouldn't hurt either. He was just looking around for people, and then if he managed to find the bandit camp he would call his team and make sure the camp wouldn't run off somewhere. As he looked around with his hands folded behind his head, his tenant started to complain. "Will you shut up, boy? You're just letting them know you're looking for them. If you shut up, you may find someone. And I should listen to your furry ass, why? Because we both want you to kill something and because you're retarded and should listen to your superiors. Oh, fuck off, you stupid fox. Just do what I say, kid. I think I can sense some group of life to your left." That actually got Naruto's attention. He quickly crouched down and did his best to suppress his massive chakra signature before silently running through the undergrowth of the few trees that they were surrounded by. Pretty soon he came upon a small encampment of men that were mostly eating or messing with their weapons, which were mostly swords or knives. "Thanks, Kyuubi," Naruto muttered out in his head before backing off a ways and contacting the team. "Targets have been found. I'm about a 10-minute run southeast of where we started." "Good job, Naruto-kun. Wait for us while keeping an eye on them," came Kuritsuchi's voice. "Got it. You can come out now, little genin." A voice called out, getting Naruto to spin around and glare at the small group of 3 that had come out to confront him. 2 weren't really dressed any different from the other bandits, but the one who had spoken was different. He had dark green hair that was tied into a spiked ponytail that stuck out from the back of his head. Worn as a face mask was a black bandana with a slashed Suna plate on it. His black eyes narrowed at the boy as he held a large shuriken in both hands. He had on a worn tan Suna flak jacket worn open without a shirt underneath, showing his scarred but muscled body. He had on dark brown shorts as well, along with black sandals, and tied to each leg were 3 scrolls each. "What's a little blonde twerp like you doing out here? Were you sent to take us out? Huh, don't make me laugh. Oh darn, you found me." Naruto sighed out in a tone that showed he clearly did not care he had been discovered. "I guess that means I have to fight." He then raised his fists and smiled. "Make sure not to hold back now." "Don't hold back? Boy, do you realize who you're?" The Suna nin shouted before jumping back as Naruto was right where he just was and had stabbed both the men next to him in the chest with kunai. Well, someone's fast. But that doesn't matter to me. Nobody can stand before Suna's Jishin. Magnet release, he shouted before whipping the 2 large throwing stars at the boy's head. Naruto simply let out a feral smirk. "So Naruto found them. That's surprising considering he can't find shit." Hikari commented as she regrouped with Kurai and Kuritsuchi. They had then quickly headed to collect Naruto so they could plan an attack and then eliminate the bandits. Kurai nodded his agreement with his teammates' open backhand to Naruto's skills. That was one thing all 3 on the team shared: they didn't brag about stuff they couldn't do. If they were horrible at something, they wouldn't try and hide it. They'd freely admit they were bad at that subject and then humiliate and or kill you with another. Naruto was the worst tracker on the team. Him finding the bandit camp so quickly meant he was either lucky or they were advertising and shouting for attention. Considering the lack of them noticing, and the boys' infamous luck at poker back in Iwa, they were betting on the former. Owanuki and Deidara swore off playing with the kid after 3 nights of trying and failing to beat him. Said story spread through Iwa within a week and the 2 were laughing stocks for losing to a gambling 10-year-old. Yeah, he probably just stumbled across them. To be honest, I'm surprised we haven't heard an explosion yet. I mean, he can't really stay hidden either. Kuritsuchi said. Kurai again nodded at the open insults to his teammates' skills without comment. He wasn't one for insulting or praising someone. He gave you the cold hard truth, and that was that. The cold hard truth about Naruto's stealth and tracking skills were that they were barely above your average genin and were easily the worst on the team. But he made up for them with his speed and everything else. We should hurry. I wish to complete the mission and return home. Kurai monotoned, getting the girls to let out a small right as they picked up their speed before finding the bandit camp all cheering and surrounding something in the center of them. Hikari and Kuritsuchi were speechless and staring at the bandits in shock as they seemed to blatantly cheer and jeer at whatever they were watching. "What the hell is going on?" Kuritsuchi accidentally exclaimed. She then slapped her hand over her mouth, but none of the enemies bothered turning around to see who spoke. Rather, they must have assumed they were members that had just gotten back from something as they answered the question. Boss said he felt some chakra signature nearby and went to check it out when he returned fighting this blonde kid from Iwa. He told us to stay back and the kid just seemed to get happy and they started ducking it out. I don't really know what's going on, but this fight's damn entertaining. Plus, if by some impossible miracle the kid beats boss, then we'll just kill him ourselves. The bandit replied without turning around. Kuritsuchi was livid at the thought of Naruto disobeying her orders. She made a single hand sign before hengaying into a bland bandit and pushing her way through the group to see who Naruto was fighting. Kurai and Hikari quietly did the same and followed her to see. Jishin. Kyokase Kichigai. Magnet release. Polarity madness. The Suna Nin shouted as he threw his large shuriken at the blonde again. Naruto ducked under one and used the gauntlet on his left wrist to deflect the other. He then charged the man but had to flip to the side to avoid the shuriken as they flew back to him and spun around him. "We've been going at this for about 8 minutes now, Genin. I gotta admit, you're the first to last this long against me since I left Suna. How about I up the stakes again?" He taunted before grabbing one of the scrolls tied to his leg and unsealing its contents. 3 more shuriken the same size as the others appeared and he quickly grabbed them and channeled chakra to them before tossing them at Naruto. The blonde began to rapidly dodge them before the 2 from earlier flew at him as well. The strange thing Naruto noticed was that the shuriken wouldn't simply fly and then stick in the ground, but rather they would spin around and try to strike him from multiple angles. "You're controlling these things with your chakra, aren't you?" he asked as he dodged them again, the same smirk on his face that he had ever since the fight started. "Correct. My Jishin. Kyokase Kichigai allows me to control metal I've channeled my bloodline chakra into. And best of all, he started as he grabbed another scroll and unsealed another 3 giant shuriken. Is that it doesn't take much chakra and I can control multiple targets at once." He shouted as he added the newest 3 to his attack. Naruto was still dodging with ease, but he lost his smirk now. Something the ninja noticed. "Oh, not having fun anymore, little Genin? Well, that's too bad. You were stupid to think you could take me on. I sensed your chakra as soon as you got close to the camp and I plan on killing you before you can call for reinforcements." This got Naruto to laugh as he continued dodging. "What's so funny? I called them right before you approached me." Everyone's eyes widened at the boy's remarks as he grinned darkly. "They should be here any minute now, and the only reason all of you aren't dead yet was because I didn't want to steal all the fun for myself. My mother always taught me to share, you see." He joked before jumping straight up. The Suna Nin gritted his teeth but waved his hands towards the boy, sending all the shuriken at him at once. Futon. Senpu Bakuha. Wind release. Whirlwind blast. Naruto shouted as he threw a hand forward and launched a small whirlwind at the shuriken, knocking them all off course. With a grin he quickly did more signs and as soon as he landed called out a second jutsu. Futon. Tatsumaki Taihao. Wind release. Tornado cannon. Naruto slammed his hands together, launching a large twister straight towards the Suna Nin. The man dodged to the side and grit his teeth as he reasserted his control over the shuriken and made them start spinning in the air around himself. Not bad, brat. Not many people back home have such good control over their element, and we're part of Kei's no Kuni, Land of Wind, for Kami's sake. It really makes me wonder just who in Iwa could have trained you. Well, mostly it was my Ka-chan. But Tsuchikage Oji-sama is the only other wind user in the village, so he gave me tips with my element. Not that I really need to use it against small fry like you. After all, you're a censor, can't you tell?" Naruto taunted as the man narrowed his eyes and made the ram sign to focus his chakra. His eyes widened in shock as he stared at the boy, who grinned in return. "Yeah, you caught me not 'cause I suck but 'cause it's a pain in the ass to suppress all this. How the hell does a kid like you have so much chakra?" He shouted as he unsealed the rest of his shuriken, bringing the grand total up to 15. Naruto just shook his finger at the man the way an adult would do to a child. Now that would be telling. But I think it's time I ended this farce. Naruto replied before standing up straight and getting a serious look on his face. Sensei, I know you're already in the crowd, can you just start killing now? I'm getting bored playing with this Jonin wannabe. You're getting your ass kicked when we get home, Naruto-kun. A voice replied, to which he shrugged before three of the bandits were surrounded by puffs of smoke to reveal they were his team under Henge. The bandits spun around in shock, but before they could do anything in return were struck down by kunai from Kuritsuchi as Hikari ran through hand signs and Kurai held his right hand out. Team, kill them all, she shouted as Hikari finished her hand signs and slammed her hands on the ground. Doden. Doryuso. Earth release. Earth flow spears, she shouted as spears of stone shot up piercing many of the nearby men. Over by Kurai, a black energy flowed out of his hand before forming a scythe which he grabbed and began to cut through the bandits like paper with exceptional skill and speed. Naruto meanwhile had charged back at the Suna ninja to finish his fight. Kuritsuchi simply used kunai in her hands to strike down everyone she could reach. Shit, die you fucking brat, the man shouted as he sent his multiple shuriken towards Naruto. The boy however grinned as his gauntlets glowed for a second before a blade shot out from the space between the fox's eyes on both gauntlets. The blades were 2 feet long and serrated on both sides as they were parallel to his hands along with a sharpened point to them. With his blades Naruto began to cut down the shuriken as they came, channeling wind chakra through his blades so that they would cut straight through the enemy's metal stars. The shards fell to the ground useless as the ninja cut his connection to them after seeing them get sliced through. He managed to direct 2 away from the boy and back to his hands as he leapt back as Naruto continued charging him. Fine, let's see how your team handles this, he shouted before throwing his 2 left towards Hikari and Kurai respectively. Hikari saw it coming right away and was quick to flip behind a group of men, so when the shuriken flew at her it instead embedded itself in one's back as he dropped the ground. Kurai though wasn't paying the slightest attention to Naruto's opponent but was focusing on the more direct threats, and because of it, he never saw the shuriken flying at his head. Kurai move, Naruto shouted out. The boy spun around and saw what was coming and quickly jumped, but his reaction was too slow as the shuriken twisted in midair and struck him clean in the chest. The black-haired youth fell to the ground with a blank look as the shuriken was embedded in his chest. Naruto spun and ran at the Suna ninja as Hikari grit her teeth and began to tear through the bandits around her in anger. Only Kuritsuchi focused on the fallen boy, and what she saw made he grit her teeth. Shit, Hikari, Naruto, fall back now. Both were confused as to why they had to fall back as the academy had taught them to fight on even if a teammate were to fall. While they lost Kurai, it didn't seem like a reason for a full-on retreat. If anything, they just needed to stop holding back some of their more dangerous techniques. At least that was what they thought until they heard the laughing. It started quiet but gained strength until everyone could clearly hear it over the sounds of battle and froze. This wasn't a laugh of triumph or of some battlefield humor, that was obvious. The laugh was one of the deranged, the mad, the insane that take pleasure in things only they know. They all turned to the source and were shocked to see it was coming from Kurai, still lying on the ground with the shuriken stuck in his chest. From their personal experience with the team during the few weeks of being a team, they could freely admit they were freaked out by the boy's laughter. Kurai had never cracked a smile or even given a sigh of annoyance. Yet he just got a large sharp metal star slammed into his chest and suddenly he was laughing his ass off. It honestly scared them worse than any one of the bandits or even their missing nin commander could. Hikari, Naruto, now, Kuritsuchi yelled to get them moving. The two merely looked at her and saw her with a focused look on her face. She clearly knew what was going on, so they would follow her without complaint like they were supposed to. Why are we running? Naruto asked as he leapt into the surrounding trees and met up with his teammate and sensei on the outskirts, still watching the bandits and laughing Kurai. Because all hell is about to break loose now that Kurai is bleeding. Kuritsuchi answered. The two shared confused glances before asking why, and she just ran her hand through her hair as she watched the event unfold. The two of you never asked what happened to his last team, did you? They shook their heads no, so she began to explain. Alright. Then listen and listen well. You're technically his third teammates. The first were killed by an enemy during a mission, he was the only survivor. The last one though, Kurai got hit and started bleeding. Then this happened, and he killed his team himself. What the fuck are you laughing about? A bandit shouted as he bravely walked up to the laughing teen on the ground. Kurai paid no attention to the man as he kept laughing with his eyes closed. Thinking he would shut up the creepy boy, he raised a sword up ready to slash it down and cut off his head. Just as he was about to, the boy stood straight up and was gripping him by the throat. His eyes still closed and he was still laughing. "Let me go, you freak," he choked out as Kurai opened his eyes. They were still gray like before, only now they shined with an obvious madness that wasn't present before. With a slight gasp of pain, Kurai used his free hand to pull the shuriken out of his chest with a sickening squelch of blood. He stared at it as he spun it a few times in his hand before turning back to the man he held. "You know," he started in a deceptively calm monotone compared to the maniacal laughter he was giving just a second ago. "My teammate was right about something. We've all been taught at one point to share," he said before grinning madly. He then spun the shuriken in his hand and laughed. "So why don't we share the pain?" he shouted as he rammed the shuriken straight into the Mon's chest and dropped him to the ground. The others backed up in shock as the teen looked around and then held his right hand out. "Soul Reaver, come back to your master please," he asked calmly as the weapon lying a few feet away from him dissipated into a black mist before swirling around his outstretched hand and reforming. It was now that the bandits got a good look at the weapon he was using. The shaft was black as midnight and at least 5 feet long. At one end was a small purple gem that seemed to glow, with what they had no clue. On the opposite end in gold was a large circle with a triangle imposed on it. Coming from one side of the circle was a blood-red blade that curved out for 2 feet from him. All in all, it was a dangerous-looking and deadly weapon that seemed to fit the boy's personality change perfectly. "How the hell are you not dead?" the Sunan Nin shouted out as he pulled a kunai out from a small pouch. The man was dealing with the boy better than the bandits were, but was still scared and creeped out by the boy standing in the middle of them, blood freely pouring out of the wound he dealt to his chest. Kurai just started to laugh as he looked around from scared face to scared face before settling his eyes on the ninja. "Fucking answer me, you freak." "Freak?" he asked, seemingly testing the word in his mouth as he kept up a grin. "I guess you could say that, but it's not my name, so don't call me it. It's not my fault you can't grasp that I'm immortal," he replied, getting everyone to gasp in shock, including Naruto and Hikari from outside the group as they listened in. Kuritsuchi merely kept her eyes focused on the boy, ready for when she would have to react. She was briefed on Kurai before being placed as his sensei and knew what she was supposed to do if and when he got like this. She was ready to do it as well, though Naruto and Hikari had no clue. Their attention was drawn as the boy continued to talk. "As I don't like being called a freak, I suppose that means I have to tell you my name then, doesn't it? Well then you can call me Sin."
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.